Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the day 2 of workshop on research project writing and data analysis, organized by Amity School of Communication in association with Amity Academic Staff College at Amity University, Noida. I'm very glad that we are doing this research workshop where research scholars and the faculty members are able to see how academic writing is done, how research writing is done, and how data analysis is done. It's very interesting that how we learned yesterday to, how presentations are made. And today we are here to welcome, I am here to welcome Professor Subhash Dhulia. The person who doesn't need any introduction. I am supposed to introduce him. He is the professor at School of Journalism and News Media Studies at Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. Has worked in various universities as associate professor, as professor at Indian Institute of Mass Communication, at Indian Institute of Mass Communication, at Indian Information Service. He has been course director at various universities again. He has worked as editor and editorial writer with Times of India group of newspapers. And he has been serving the media fraternity for a very long time. And he has written various books and research papers, and he has contributed tremendously to the media research and the media industry. I heartily welcome you, sir, to Amity University and Amity School of Communication. We are all blessed and honored that you are here today, and you are here to guide us on a very important topic that relates to research, which is so important for every research scholar to understand and start off with their research. The topic that he is going to discuss today is writing techniques for literature review, identifying trends in the literature, sources, and writing generalizations. And we are all very honored to have you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sonam, for your kind words. Today's topic is techniques in writing in review of literature. So I will be discussing techniques in context of developing conceptual and theoretical framework rather than in skills, because I have a little bit negative opinion about the skills. But skills primarily concern the training. So we'll discuss in terms of how to develop your conceptual and theoretical framework to undertake the research. So which is part of techniques, of course. Now the first major challenge is to articulate your thesis statement, that what research you are going to interview, to conduct. And in this age of information, we have huge amount of information at our disposal. And we have to navigate, we have to collect the information, we have to process it and evaluate it, and then select the information which is relevant to our thesis. That's a major challenge now, that how to evaluate the information. And because the information is so massive, so huge, that it is practically impossible for a scholar to get information of all that is on the public domain. But to the extent it is possible, the first challenge is to be informed about the information which is already in public domain, to the extent you can do it, and to dig out the relevant information which is relevant for your research. So that's very, very important. And how to search on Google also, how to navigate Google. The major challenge today is to gather authentic information, reliable information. So the sources of information are very, very important. Because in journalism, we teach that when a source is revealing some information to you, there is certain motivation behind it. Because the source wants that information to be placed in the public domain, and it is bound to serve his motives. So that motivation is always there. So in journalism, we teach that what is being revealed is not news, but what is being concealed is news. In research methodology also, you have to evaluate any information originating from any source, that what can be the motivation of revealing this information. So these are certain, then how to identify the reliable sources. Now, for example, we get all kind of news stories from media, which are based on the data that is displayed in the websites. So first is to list out the websites which are reliable. And within the website, what is the origin of the source? Who is the person or source who is revealing that information? So that is the first challenge, that one has to become thoroughly informed about the topic of research. So to be informed is one thing, and then to be knowledgeable, to convert that information into knowledge. Now we can broadly say that news media, journals, news aggregators, they are the source of information. But the knowledge we acquire through the articles, analysis, books, research journals. And in today's context, we are living in a world where these headlines journalism, or these journalism which attract clicks and the hits, is more becoming dominant. And a journalism which deals with the details, presenting information in context, is on decline. But at the same time, if you do a proper search, you have short form content also, and you have long form of the content also. Unfortunately, in our country, we don't have that kind of research journals or journals of contemporary, covering contemporary issues like Atlantic and Foreign Affairs. In Atlantic magazine, articles are running into 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 words. Same is the case of the Foreign Affairs. In our country, we don't find that kind of a trend. So whatever literature, that means newspapers are literature in a hurry, of course. And to become informed, you have to read newspapers. So you have to go for in-depth journalism kind of a thing. So we have, one is that line journalism, and another brand is the in-depth journalism. You should identify those sources, those magazines, which really go for the in-depth journalism, analysis and interpretation. So first challenge is to become informed, because I've noticed on many occasions, I've been attending so many meetings of the research scholars, seeing their presentation. I've invariably noticed that even the information level is very, very poor. Someone is doing research on the prime time debate, and the scholar cannot define what is prime time. So if you are doing any research on television journalism, then contextual information is very, very, very important. You have to study the concept, the contextual information also. That was TV medium is. Without understanding the nature of the TV medium, you cannot do research on any of the TV programming. So this is the first challenge when you do the review of literature, because I think in our last session, somebody mentioned that in our review of literature, only books are cited. That's perfectly okay. You will be citing books and scholarly and theoretical articles, but to place your research thesis in a place, to make it contemporary, it's very important that first you become totally informed, and then you have knowledge about the subject. So here, when you are undertaking these two exercises, you are making just a kind of placing your thesis in a context, that what you are going to do. And then you have to articulate your research questions, your research objectives. Because in this process, you are identifying the gaps. What we call the process of moving from unknown to known, a topic that you are not much aware of. Through this process, you are moving from unknown to known. So then accordingly, based on your information knowledge of the subjects, you identify the gaps. And this is the process that you are continuously identifying the gaps. That this much information I have, here is the gap that I need this much information also. Here, this much knowledge I have acquired on the subject, but here are the gaps. So identifying these gaps in the process of getting fully informed, identifying these gaps when you are acquiring knowledge on that subject, they are very, very important. And then based on that is that you formulate your research questions, you articulate your objectives and your thesis statement. So these are very, very important, crucial dimension of when you are doing a research, that everything will follow it. So that is very important. And today you see, we are living in a situation that entirely new kind of media landscape has emerged now. And you must relate your research to the new media landscape. It lasts 5 or 10 years. The media landscape has undergone very, very drastic changes now. Now we have different kind of media. We have the information giants. There is emergence of surveillance society. Some of these 5 major information giants like Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, they gather huge amount of information on each one of us. They know more about us than we know about ourselves. Now, I don't find that we are undertaking much research in those emerging areas. We are still confined to the research kind of a thing, that women empowerment through All India Radio, comparative study of a village in Rajasthan and a village in Lucknow. I don't find that what is relevance of this topic in today's context. That what is the exposure, media exposure of the people. So that's one thing that that new media landscape is totally different. Now there is one concept that is being coined now, that democracy has been now replaced by a kind of mediacracy. I'm posing all these issues because it's not that relevant to research techniques, but that's how you evolve your research thesis. How do you pick up? That means what are the areas that you should do some research, which is meaningful, which is usable, which has practical value. It can impact the news programming of the media. It can provide crucial inputs to the government for policy formulation. In fact, that's a great responsibility of media research and academics, that we are a kind of a watchdog of the watchdog. If we do conduct right kind of a research, and if we can prove that the reliability and believability of news channels has drastically undergone, then obviously that will impact news media also. That will impact the media in new advertising industry. Because in today's context, one of the top executive of a media house, he said that I'm not interested in the content, the quality of the content. I'm interested in advertising. So the entire focus is on advertising, to fetch more advertisements. So advertising industry, if we do right kind of research, even advertising industry will have to think that their advertising messages that are being telecast on a news channel, which has very low level of credibility and believability. So advertising industry will also have to think that our advertising messages being telecast on that credibility will also carry lower level of credibility and believability. So that dynamics may emerge in due course. But the point is, today's media, the mainstream media, is totally governed by the commercial consideration. And the major political discourse is taking place through the media, and more so social media. Now, for example, today we are living in a situation what I call Twitter-driven politics. The entire politics debate is taking through Twitter, social media. Politicians are just making tweets, then just few words statement without going into details of the policy and programs of the political parties. It's all superficial kind of political discourse that is going on. Then second superficial discourse that goes on is this studio-based television programming. Studio-based television programming had become a kind of a low-cost entertainment. People watch them not for information news, but just for the entertainment. This is very pathetic, you see. You have people debating on different issues, from COVID to Ukraine crisis, to national security, to defense. And you have same set of political spokespersons and same set of spokespersons that are expert on everything. They can speak on any topic under the sun. Now, what kind of debate that can take place when you have that kind of a set of the people? Scholars, academicians are never invited in those talk shows. Now, we have that kind of media programming, which is influencing our politics. You see, in 80s and 90s, in election campaign, because elections are very, very important for a democracy, there used to be door-to-door campaign. Political parties, workers, they used to visit homes of the people to convince them that what we are going to do. Now I live in Delhi because in 90s, when I was in Delhi, during election time, every 15 minutes there is a knock at the door, and some workers of the political party will visit you to convince you. Now that door-to-door campaign in Delhi has now totally disappeared. Now in no election times ever the political workers visit our home for the campaigning. So the entire political campaign, it has now shifted to the media. So that's why this term is being used, that now democracy is being controlled and run by the media. And media, the nature of media is that media is not conducting any serious political discourse. No serious political discourse. The responsibility of media is what we call it watchdog. That watchdog means keep an eye on the government and those who are holding the levers of power to expose their mistreats and the corruption, and at the same time to inform the people about government policies and the programs. So media is a kind of a mediator between government and the public in a democracy. An informed citizenry is foundation of the democracy. If people are not informed, they cannot think critically, they cannot rationalize, and their voting will be based on the misinformed, maybe because of emotional manipulations, because of playing with their feelings. Now it is being said that now votes are not cast on the basis of what people think, but votes are casted on the basis of what they feel. So democracy is being replaced by an irrational thinking and total absence of the informed democracy, by misinformed democracy, informed people, and manipulated people, emotionally manipulated people. That's the role that media is playing, and the form that political communication has taken place. Now, these are the areas that demands great amount of research. Academics must make effective intervention in the political discourse. You see, the younger generation, even some of you might be very negative attitude towards politics. I don't like politics. I don't like politicians. That attitude is, I think, very harmful for the democracy and for the nation as well. Because politics is nerve center of a nation. Politics is nerve center of a society. Everything is decided by the politics. It's a core of our national life. So you cannot remain indifferent to the politics. So this kind of mediacracy, this new research areas are now emerging. That when politics is when democracy is becoming dependent on the media, and the media which is controlled by these commercial mainstream news media, and then these information giants, because these information giants, they have so much information that they know about our reading habits, they know about our food habits, what they know about our dress code, and accordingly they formulate their marketing policy. Micro targeting has become now very common. So you are always in the watch. Every bit, in the moment you log into the web, they start gathering information about you. You buy anything from the Amazon or from Flipkart, your consumption pattern is being analyzed. You make any comment on Facebook or any other social media, your political orientation is being evaluated. So that's how the democracy are being controlled. So on the one hand, you have this commercialized media, which is simply misinforming the people by offering them the kind of content that will grab attention, not educate them, not inform them, but grab the attention. And then they will watch their channel, their show for half an hour, just for the entertainment value. Maybe after that half an hour show, people will criticize it, will condemn it, that what kind of show they are showing to us. But once they have watched that show for half an hour, the TRP and the hits and clicks has gone up. The rating has gone up. So we have that kind of media that we are witnessing today. So at these two levels, that the kind of role that media play and the kind of these information genes, the kind of information they are gathering, they can manipulate our political orientation through micro-targeting. Election campaigns will gradually go to the micro-targeting. National political parties will have different campaign strategy, maybe for different district, because they will analyze the political orientation of that community or the people of that districts, and accordingly they can articulate, they can plan their election strategy. Now this is the state of the politics that as scholars and researchers we cannot ignore. So 2 points I will try to stress upon is that our research must create an impact on media programming of new channels. And second is, our research must influence the politics. We must enter into the political communication, the kind of communication that is taking place. We talk a lot about development communication. We have in fact a course in every master's degree program on development communication. But in development communication, what are the issues that needs to be researched? You see, since independence, we have launched some 45 projects for rural development, 45 projects. And if you remember, once Rajiv Gandhi made a statement when he was Prime Minister, he said that only 8% of that money has actually gone to the grassroots. And there are studies that say that even if 50% of 45 development projects would have been implemented, the country would have been a totally different status. Our rural sector would have been not that pathetic the way it is today. So these 45 development projects, the entire resources were cornered by corrupt politicians, bureaucrats, these middlemen, these power brokers, and that was not utilized for the purpose for which it was meant. Now, when we say development communication, why we don't enter into this field, that how the communication back up to the development projects failed? What kind of informations were gathered? What saying that I have just, on the basis of my limited exposure, because I cannot say that this is all the research that is big. Some might have done it, but I'm not aware of. Why in development commission segment, we have never tried to undertake any study which will relate communication studies to the implementation of these development projects. So Beta Academics in a way is a major platform to give feedback to the government and to the people also that what really is happening. So this is very important, that how we are conducting research and to what extent our research has a practical value. It is impacting our news programming, so our media. It's impacting our politics. Now you see, this information gathering business has become so powerful that large number of literature is now being published in the Western countries on those issues. That in fact, just now I've been bought it, but I was watching a title of a book. The title of the book is Whether Democracy will Survive in 21st Century. So the reviews of that book, I've gone through them. And the entire book is focused on how this information gathering, this surveillance, this micro-targeting is going to impact the democracy. And the future of democracy is being debated now. The future of freedom is being debated now. Fareed Zakaria, who is a great scholar, he was editor of Foreign Affairs. Now he works for the CNN. He's international analyst of the CNN. He has written a book on the future of freedom. Now all these issues are being debated, and point is, as a research scholar, are we aware of these contemporary debates? When I say we should be fully informed that what are the issues that are being debated, what are the issues that are being projected by the news media, what are the issues that are being raised by politicians. We have to think in those terms, that what kind of political system that we are heading towards, what kind of democracy, what is the fate of the democracy, what is the fate of the information. Can you say that we have freedom of choice? At times, the freedom of choice is a myth. It is argued that now you have so many channels, so many platforms, so many kind of programmings. You choose whatever you want. But what you are going to choose? You keep on watching a channel and you are watching the same. There is no diversity. Now, when we say political awareness, the role of media in a democracy, when I was in Delhi, when I joined journalism, in fact, that was in 80s. In Delhi, there were some 5-6 newspapers with different political orientation. There was no television at that time. So there was Times of India, which was considered centralist. There was Hindustan Times, which was considered pro-government, whichever party is in power. There was Indian Express, which was considered anti-establishment, always critical of the government. There was Motherland, which was run by the BJP, not directly, but it was BJP orientation. There was Patriot, which was left and communist orientation. Statesman, which was strongly in favor of the free market economy and very critical of mixed economy and controlled economy. So we had that kind of a media landscape in Delhi that we used to get all perspective. In fact, I would say that whatever foundation we have in politics and economics, it is because of that period, because we were journalists and we have to write editorials and articles. We read all the articles and editorials, all these 5-6 newspapers. So we get to know the entire picture that on this particular issue, what are the different perspectives. So that's how I think in journalism that foundation has been our my strength, I can say that. Today, afterwards, what really happened is that Times of India reduced its price to 2 rupees or 1 rupees. And same thing, saying Hindustan Times also did the same thing. And these newspapers, other newspapers, who were dependent on the revenue that they were generating from the subscription from the readers, they could not compete that market competition. So within a couple of years, 90% of English readers in Delhi were controlled by these two newspapers, because we tend to buy newspapers for 1 rupee. We were not prepared to pay 5 rupees or 10 rupees. That remains even today also. So that's how concentration of media power also occurred. So this is another, that the variety and diversity of the sources of information, it has shrunk. So we have volume of information, but at the same time, it's very difficult to say that to what extent that information is relevant. Because media's role at agenda setting is that when I was a journalist, there used to be 5-6 events that used to figure in every cover front page of every newspaper, because they were considered equally important. And when you pose 5 national issues or global issues before the people, then people they are aware that these are the major issues that the country and the world is confronting. Today, that kind of a journalism has disappeared now. You watch television channel in the evening, then there are some major stories that are being played. Next day, maybe these stories are not appearing in the print media also. In print media also, the front page of all newspapers are not the same. Because earlier days, it used to be same in the sense that there were 5-6 major stories which will definitely appear on the front page. And if their story is not appearing on the front page, editors will call the chief editor that why we missed that story. Now, missed any story, that concept is now totally gone. So this is another dimension, that we are living in a situation where plurality and diversity in the media, it has totally disappeared. So we have plenty of choices, but I don't think we have the real choices. We think we have the choices. We have plenty of choices in consumer market, but the branding, the advertising, the way it influences you, and when there is a marketing of the different mobile phones, the ordinary citizen is not technologically equipped that he or she can evaluate the merit and demerit of a particular mobile phone. So it's just totally through the advertising bombardment that their choices are manipulated. So whether we take it consumer goods, whether they take it media content, we have these trends that are occurring, that choice has become a myth. You have the same product in different packaging. The basic content is the same. So, well, that is what is happening today. Political communication, I think, is another area that researcher must focus on. You cannot ignore politics. You cannot ignore the issues that democracy is confronting. You have to think about it, that what relationship that democracy and media has evolved now over the years. So just these are the issues that we should cover. Social media, the way it has emerged now, you all know that social media is full of fake news, disinformation, misinformation. There are the studies that 70% of the information in the domain of social medias are either fake news or disinformation and misinformation. You see, and this fake news are originated from the politicians. There is a report in Washington Post that President Trump, he spoke 20,000 lies in his 4 years of presidency. His average of lying was some 6-7 per day. So he was always busy in tweeting. So that's the kind of politics that is emerging. We cannot ignore it. You see, after the Cold War, you all are aware that it was considered that this is the end of the ideology. And the future wars will be fought on the civilization lines. That was Samuel Huntington book, The Clash of Civilizations, and Francis Fukuyama book of The End of the History. There were two major books that came out. They analyzed the post-Cold War world order. That was this post-ideological phase now human civilization has entered. So after that, there's a decline of ideology in political life. And today, what really is happening is that, for example, you take the United States. The Trump entire agenda was a racist agenda. So in America, racism has become so deep-rooted that despite the fact that Trump was defeated, he scored highest popular vote in the history of Republican Party. What is the agenda of Boris Johnson in Britain? Totally anti-immigration. Nothing about the policies and programs and the development and the reconstruction. Totally based on the anti-immigration campaign. You know on what base elections are being fought in our country. In our country now, religion, caste, community, ethnicity are dominating the politics. It's not confined to one political parties, but all the political parties. So this is the trend in the politics that is happening. And as a researcher, I think that's what I said at the beginning, that we should be fully informed and knowledgeable. If your review of your teacher should not be confined, you just picked up one theme and then picked up some 10, 15 books and just glance through them, glance at scholar who is making presentation per teacher. What is your thesis statement? You have to be fully aware, informed, and knowledgeable of these contemporary trends that are taking place. Only then you can make intervention and impact. You see, academics is it's a responsibility, and research is creating new knowledge. And creation of new knowledge, where we are today, we have to think about it, that our higher education institutions, to what extent they are creating knowledge. So that's very, very important, that what kind of research that you are doing, what kind of impact that research is creating, that's we have to think about. But again, you say, in all my interactions in different platforms, in different universities, the topics that I've seen, the topics that are selected, I was never convinced by any topic, which will be relating itself with these contemporary trends and temporary issues. Because there's so many now patterns and the trends that are emerging, whether it's politics or whether it's economics, our cultural life, our social life. I haven't ever seen any topic which will be researching and what role media is playing. To what extent media is critical of those issues? What is the coverage of media on the controversy and debate that is going on GDP-focused growth? GDP-focused growth is now a major issue in global economics, and we don't report that at all. We don't cover that at all. Why someone should not conduct research on this issue? You see, it was in 1991 with the collapse of Soviet Union, and when there is a wave of emergence of free market economy across the globe, Joseph Stiglitz was chief economist of of World Bank. And he was key architect of the process of globalization. And in 2000, by 2005, all those supporters of the globalization, they were very, very critical of the process of globalization. Stiglitz, in fact, made a statement. He said that this globalization, we expected that this will be globalization of the prosperity, but now this has become the process of the globalization of poverty, and it has been taken over by the multinational corporation, who are totally focused on the GDP, and they are destroying the environment. So this destruction of environment, which has become now very, very serious problem, is because of this kind of development. My only point is that why we should not be research, that why these issues which are going to have serious implications for the mankind are not being researched, that how media is reporting them, why research should not be done. How many of these burning issues that are going to shape our future, that are going to shape the future of the mankind in the kind of age that we are living in. This major transformation are occurring. We should focus on those issues. That's, I think, very, very important now. So these are some of the, then another is, we have always seen journalism as a craft. You see, I'm very critical of the new education policy, because new education policy is stressing on skills and to make people employable. So they don't differentiate between academic disciplines, professional courses, vocational courses. Now universities are the institutions of higher learning and research. Universities are not polytechnic, universities are not IITs, universities are not IIMs. Training is the job of the IITs and IIM and the polytechnic. Training is not job of the universities. So in universities, as a scholar, we should think of it, because in professional course are bound to be a combination of knowledge and skills, of course. A combination of education and training, because education means imparting knowledge and training means imparting skills. But again, the question that I always point out, that whether the journalism courses of the universities, their objective is to produce electricians or electrical engineers. So whenever I see imparting skills, that means you are just producing electricians. And we are imparting concepts, that means we are producing electrical engineers. So when we take the journalism education, we should not deal with the journalism education in isolation. You cannot practice journalism. You cannot do any journalism research or research, commission research without a strong foundation in political science, economics, history, sociology, and so on and so forth. Can you do any research on, for example, say on the election campaigns or campaign strategy of various political parties without understanding the caste system of Uttar Pradesh? Because I come across one thesis that I evaluated. So it was talking a lot about the election campaigns, but it was totally silent about the caste combination of the Uttar Pradesh. So this research we cannot conduct in isolation. Journalism is a stream of social sciences. Journalism is just not a craft. That's why I don't argue with this argument that our job is to produce industry-ready professionals. For industry-ready professionals, 1 year diploma course is enough. When you are going for master's degree is higher education. You don't need to do a master's degree to become a history reporter or a television reporter. Any youngster with basic skills, just to give them 6 months or 9 months training is good for the industry. But when you go for the master's degree, for the PhD programs, you are creating scholars, researchers, academicians who will create knowledge, and not just to become reporters and the anchors in television channels, the kind of brand of journalism that we practice. So these are the issues and some of the dimensions of the contemporary media landscape. that I've just given an overview that how we should undertake our research, how we should go for the review of the literature. Reviewing literature means not just the journalism, but all social sciences, and to place our research in the right kind of context. Don't detach journalism from other streams of the social sciences. So I think, Somana, we can have some interaction. That would be better.
Yes, sir. There are some questions in the question answer section, so I'll read it from there. So Preeti Verma is asking, one of the things while conducting scientific research in sciences, we are limited to infrastructure of the university and guides proficiency. So many scholars face a problem of conducting research in their interested area. So how to conduct quality research instead of quantity research?
Well, you see, first thing is that we must opt for now interdisciplinary, even transdisciplinary research. It's not, we should even go to the pure sciences. You see now, computer science people, they are creating technology. Silicon Valley is creating so many technologies, but they are ignorant about political, cultural, social implications of these technologies. That is our domain. That is our domain, that we should analyze them, which we are not doing. That's one thing. And what was the other part of the question? What was the other part? Sonam, there was another part of the questions also.
So yeah, so she's trying to ask that, we are not able, as a researcher, scholars are not able to select the right area of their own interest. So is that a possibility that, they can focus on quality research? Because if they are not interested
I think
in the topic that they are working on, then the quality might not come out.
Point is, which I, in the beginning, I said that first thing is that to be informed and to develop intellectual and professional skills to evaluate the information which is relevant to you. How to evaluate, how to navigate Google, how to gather information, how to process it, how to analyze it, and how to dig out the relevant information that is relevant to our research. That's a major challenge, and which I discussed in the beginning. And when you have total overview of global communication, political, economic, culture scenario, then you can identify right kind of a topic which will be relevant. Any research which will have everlasting value. When we create new knowledge that should have everlasting value. We should not perish within, because some of the people, they select a topic which has no long years. That it should have a long-term life. It should have a new kind of a the new knowledge that will have, I feel that you.
Sir, your voice is cracking. We're not able to hear you properly. I think the internet connection is bad. Sir, you are on mute.
It's okay now. Okay. It's okay.
Yes, sir.
Large number of government regulations, they are becoming a hindrance to encourage the research. Now, for example, I worked in IMC almost for 20 years. In IMC, there was no concept of workload. It was entirely up to the faculty that how many classes they want to take. I used to take 4 classes in a week in 4 diploma courses. When I entered University of Rajasthan, and for a very short time in the Sharda University, I was surprised that this workload formula means 5 hours back-to-back classes. And then the faculty members were forced to teach any subject. because there were only few members. They are offering undergraduate programs, postgraduate programs, and one teacher is being asked to teach 6 or 7 courses. And they are being asked that those courses which are not in their area of specialization. There is no concept of area of specialization. In one instance, one faculty member, he said that I will take this course writing for media. So I said that, have you ever worked in media or have you written any articles, any news story, any editorial articles? He said no. So but it is always his fault, because you have that kind of a courses that you have to take a course. You are being asked to teach 5 courses in a semester. So then what kind of teaching will result into? You are teaching journalism, so you are just teaching them the definition of the new inverted pyramid, 5W and H, and you are not actually teaching them news writing skills because of UGC. UGC is forcing you to teach a subject in which you are not specialized. Then we have landed in a situation that the faculty is forced to teach and leave, teach and read and teach. And second is, when you have to take 5 hours back-to-back classes, what time for research you get? So in one of the last interactions somewhere, in fact, there was NAC visit, and one of the member, he asked the faculty that they should come to the office on weekend holidays to do the research. So then I told him that weekend holidays is not a charity. Holidays are required to maintain the efficiency and the productivity of any workforce. Weekend holidays must be there. It is important. If you are working seven days in a week, your efficiency, your productivity, your intellectual skills are the casualty. So in fact, in some of the countries, Scandinavian countries, going on vacation is mandatory. It's mandatory to go on vacation so that you are fresh, you come with your efficiency and productivity is maintained. Now that person was saying to the faculty that because for 5 days they have 5 hours back-to-back classes, so they should come on Saturday and Sunday to undertake research. So that is the attitude of these regulatory bodies towards the research. A faculty hardly get any time to undertake the research. And then there is no concept of some kind of a specialization. Perfectly okay, one can do research in competent concepts, process, research, theories, but don't ask that person to teach journalism and reporting and writing. Don't ask him to teach the video production, audio production. They are totally different areas. Some can be interdisciplinary, but this workload formula is very, very harmful for undertaking the research.
So there is another question by Pramod Pandey. He says, elaborate the reasons for writing a literature review in research. Sir, can you hear us?
Your audio is not clear.
Sir, I'll repeat the question. Elaborate the reasons for writing a literature review in research.
I couldn't get that question. What is the question?
The question is,
well, in simple terms, the first is to get fully informed. Yes, first thing is to become fully informed, not only journalism, but entire political, economic, cultural scenario. Culture is very, very, very important, and how much cultural, because of consumerist society, culture is very important. So that is one area. The first thing is to become fully informed. Second is to become knowledgeable by reading books and articles and in-depth article in media, not the headline journalism, but go for I mentioned that there are short form content, long form content, opt for the long form content. And then after reading that, you have to identify the gaps in your knowledge base, in your information base. Keep on identifying these gaps, that here is the information, I need this most information on this issue. I need a bit more knowledge on that particular issue. Then comes the issue of your thesis. Then identify the topic of your thesis. That this must be this background, and then you identify the gaps in your thesis also. You identify your research questions, you articulate your objectives, and accordingly, then you identify the gaps. You read books and research articles, scholarly articles, and that's how you have to undertake research. But you have to be aware of the wider context of the topic in which you are undertaking the research. Research I've seen in a number of cases that they are totally in isolation. And just comparing some television programs, just these totally offshoot issues, like number of them on women empowerment, and never dealing with the real issues, that what are issues of women empowerment, how it is related to the development, and that kind of development communication must be related to the women empowerment. For example, in women empowerment, we are not talking about the Sonam and Poonam. We are talking about the women who are living in the villages of Rajasthan. So that. Yes, Sonam, go ahead.
Sir, there's another question by Monisca Das. She says, let me just elaborate this. How can we say that the particular article is authentic or not?
The point
How
is,
identification of
whatever information that you get from anywhere, the first is what is the source of information, and then which is the website. Now, for example, if there's some news story about any major corporation, all information about that website is available on the website. In fact, one journalist, he exposed major financial corruption just doing research of the collecting data from their websites, not going in any field. Now, collecting data is now very, very important thing. Now, point is, first is you should have intellectual skills to gather, to navigate the Google. Then you should have skills to how to approach the right kind of resources, which are the authentic websites, and then and which information has originated from which source and how reliable it is. And these are the skills that you need. You need these intellectual skills to evaluate the information.
Source of information.
There are no shortcuts for that. And that is entirely up to you that evolve these skills.
So there is another question by Shweta Kumari. She says, social media actually misguide us, especially while publishing a paper. Most of them are fake. So what is the role of social media? And
ask her. One is, there is a document on Netflix, Social Dilemma. Okay, ask her to read that books. And there is another books, 10 reasons for deleting social media platforms, apps from your mobile. That is the title of the book. And you will be surprised that the top executive of Silicon Valley, they've forbidden their children from accessing social media. Who invent this technology, they themselves don't allow their children to use the social media. I read some university in Ireland or somewhere, they banned internet in university. The entire focus is reading the books. Because you see, even now, I read the books, but I'm not comfortable reading on the laptop, because laptop is a visual distraction. Always remain the book in the hard copy format, because then you are totally focused on that. So that's how you acquire the knowledge. At social media, there are not so many books now, and there's so many literature on social media. Initially came, it was just creating communities, Second phase was very interactive, creating communities, facilitating communication across the globe. It is a very, very positive.
So we can't hear you.
That the college students, they access their mobile 150 times in a day. And they access the mobile not for the news or the knowledge of reading articles, only for Facebook and Instagram and watching these videos. So that is how the media habits are changing now. And these are the research questions that you should do. That what is this addiction of the mobile phone? You know?
So there is another question by Dr. Syed Ahmed. He says, can you suggest best ways through which thesis title can be formulated?
Title.
Research title, the thesis title.
I think I explained that at great length, that gather the information, whatever is your topic, gather the information, not only topic, but the contextual information also, political, social, economic, everything. And then read some books, acquire some knowledge on that, and then identify some gaps. And when I discuss this new media landscape, emergence of these information giants, the future of democracy, the emergence of the mediacracy, that when the democracy is being controlled by the media, and the media controlled democracy, what shape it is taking. So this is how you prepare for that. So extensive reading is very important.
Yes.
First to decide the topic, and then you do the study. I think first to study the contemporary issues that media is confronting, and then think about it.
Shweta Kumari is saying thanks to you, sir, and she agrees that nothing can replace books and journals.
Shweta from IP University.
So she hasn't mentioned her university though.
Shweta from IP University, same Shweta.
So she hasn't mentioned her university.
Her name is very common.
Yes. So there is Abdul Rahman from Mangalore University. He's a PhD scholar. He's asking, what is the standard number of literature reviews for a particular project, and for the article we can include to complete the literature review chapter?
Well, first is, which I mentioned repeatedly, that extensive study. That's first thing. Now, when you identify the books, then if you have done that exercise, then it won't be difficult for you to identify which are the books which are available. And now we have the Google search, we have Amazon. You just key in your title of any title, you get a number of books. You in Google, in Amazon, you just key in the word the negative role of Facebook, you will get number of books. So now literature is available. The point is all kind of literature is available. In Western countries, there are great amount of literature which is very, very critical and very scientifically evaluating these trends. The unfortunate part is that we don't have that kind of books and literature written in Indian perspective. That is unfortunate thing that we forget today, because you know what is the status of higher education in our country. In all state universities, they virtually collapsed. They award master's degree in English literature, and the person cannot write an email of 5 words without committing 6 mistakes. So state universities, you just look at the state universities, and then even the public institutions also. Now you compare public institutions with the private universities like Bennett or Shipyard or Ashoka, Jindal, so that you can draw your own conclusions. The kind of system that the government regulations, the way they are regulating the universities. For example, now last year, UGC made it mandatory PhD for professors also. Initially, there used to be a clause that eminent scholar or professor. Now, just cite an example. When JNU was established, what was the concept behind that? There was one of our friend Bijay Gupta. He was in Indian Foreign Service, and he was High Commissioner in Nigeria. He wanted to shift to the academics, and he was appointed Professor of Diplomacy in GNU. He was simply graduate. Now, what's wrong with that concept? Now, if we implement that concept, Bill Gates cannot become a professor of IT in our country. Even Einstein, if he's alive today, he cannot become a professor of physics. So why this? Because at professor level, if you take professor courses, you cannot draw any senior journalist now in academics at senior position. So when we say industry and academics interface, in fact, I have launched one website, buildatis.in, only to bridge these gaps. So industry, where is the industry sponsorship to the research? In every country, the industry sponsors the research. Any news organization, they sponsor the research that do this research for us. We want to change our market position. We don't get that kind of sponsorship from the industry. It is rather industry is totally insensitive to reposition themselves. They keep on repositioning themselves, and that reposition is done through the research. And they commission the universities to conduct research for them.
So Shweta Kumari, she is from Amity University. She is a PhD scholar with us. She just wrote that. And she has another question. She's asking if Shodh Ganga is a reliable source.
Which one?
Shodh Ganga is a reliable source of information for scholars, for research scholars.
Ganga?
Shodh Ganga, yes, sir.
Well, you have to evaluate. You see, nothing is reliable in this world today. Nothing. You have to develop these intellectual skills. That what is the origin of the information? What is the source of the information? What may be the motivation of the source? Nothing is reliable. You see, the data, the kind of data that governments of all governments, central government, state governments, they disseminate. The government data is large extent fake data. In fact, even now, when I was a journalist in Lucknow, that at that time government used to release press releases and make so many statements. We compile press release of 6 months. We compile the entire data. Then we send our reporter to the Bundelkhand, the grassroots table, and then we discover that on government data there are fair price of. तो मालूम है ना सस्ते गल्ले की दुकान जो होती है जहाँ subsidized food दिया जाता है. So they on papers they are existing in different places. And we went, they are just closed for 1 year or 2 years, or these soaps doesn't exist at all. But in FCI record, the food grains and rice and everything was being supplied very, very regularly. Now, government data cannot be believed. You see, government is considered a reliable source, but it's not true, because government data to large extent at times is fake and manufactured. Because when they collect data from the district level, then district officials, they have to save their own skin. They manufacture data. Like you see this debate on this hijab, some title, I think in Frontline, the title is manufactured debate or manufactured issue. So that is the title of the Frontline cover story. So these are the issues. You see, critical thinking is very, very important. Now, it's not, you see, with the emergence of artificial intelligence, algorithm, so many things technology can do now. Now, critical thinking and creativity is very, very important. And second thing is, we have a tendency that we all have some political orientation. And we like to read only that which is in conformity with our previously held beliefs. It's very, very important for a scholar to read that also, which he or she doesn't like. Which is not, so read everything. But if you are reading in today's context, you are doing any research on the communication or religion or Hinduism, I would strongly recommend that you read all those who have written on those topics. Read Goldberger, Savarkar. Recently, there are so many books that have come on the Hinduism and Hindutva. Read all those books, because if you are doing any research in political communication, you should read those books. So never think that this writer is bad. I don't like Shashi Tharoor, so I will not read his books. It should not be like that.
Thank you, sir, for such insightful session. I would like to sum it up for everybody. Sir talked about how reliability is very important when you are doing literature review. We need to do in-depth research while doing the review. Contextual information, building up the context is important. Understanding terms which are important related to your title are important. Then identifying the gaps is very, very critical to your literature review. You will not be able to write good, authentic literature review if you have not identified gaps. Repetition of similar researches is happening currently. It is better that we read more authentic articles, research journals, and papers to identify the gaps that exist in media research, and then formulate our research questions, objectives, and write our thesis statement. There are a number of emerging areas in the media, specifically new media, digital media, social media. These are the emerging media where media research is required, which is the need of the hour. And also not to forget how democracy and media are related, how media has the power to run and control democracy, and how media perspectives the whole political situation. So academicians and researchers need to take part in political communication. They need to start with political discourse, and specifically media faculty and researchers should contribute to this area for better political awareness of all the citizens and voters. Role of media and media researchers is very, very important. Sir also talked about his experience in 1980s, and while he talked about how editorials helped them gain holistic viewpoint. And similarly, the researchers today need to read from various sources so that they have a whole point of view, a holistic point of view. And he gave a lot of examples which were related to politics. Thank you, sir. It was a very, very in-depth, comprehensive, and insightful session. I'm sure everybody.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to join you for this interaction. I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So there are participants who are thanking you. I would now like to call upon Ms. Juhi Baweja.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
We can start with the second session, right?
Yes, sir. Tapan sir is here.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, one and all. I am Juhi Baweja, research scholar from ASCO, and I will be moderating this session today with Professor Dr. Tapan Mohanty. He is the Dean Distance Education and Professor and Chairperson as well at Center for Socio-Legal Studies at National Law Institute, University, Bhopal. Professor Mohanty is also an Erasmus Mundus Fellow from Denmark University of Education, Copenhagen. He pursued his PhD in sociology at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and has had a consistently brilliant academic career. His oeuvre includes over 20 key publications and paper presentations. He also holds LLB and LLM degrees. Among the list of his publications are notable books on the Bhopal catastrophe, sex selection, project documentation kit, and a critical assessment of participation of children in education in urban slums in India, respectively. As an academician, he has served in various positions in the past, including project director on health and health law, course director for executive training for the legal officers of National Hydroelectricity Development Corporation, and for the Poverty Advisory Group, Institute of Development Studies, Sussex, UK. He has also been a former consultant at the National University of Educational Planning and Administration in New Delhi, and has been a visiting faculty member at many prestigious universities from across India. He has also participated in television programs, contributed to National English Dailies, and has even broadcasted for All India Radio Bhopal. He has participated in numerous conferences, seminars, and symposiums, both at the national and international level. As a member for the Committee for Distribution of Compensation to the Victims of Bhopal Gas Tragedy, set up under the instruction of the Supreme Court of India, he has also been passionate about other environmental issues, education, gender, and sociology. Furthermore, he has also submitted important draft legislations on Right to Health Act 2020 and Clinical Establishment Act 2020 to the Department of Health, Government of Madhya Pradesh. Currently, he has taken up the challenging task of teaching, research, advocacy, and organizational responsibility, and he is achieving excellence in them. He will also be delving into a very key topic today, titled Theoretical and Conceptual Frameworks, which is considered as the basis of research and guides researchers towards concepts, theories, and models. I would also like to introduce the director for this workshop, Research Project Writing and Data Analysis, Dr. Ruhi Lal. As you know, she is the head student support and associate professor with Amity School of Communication, Amity University, Noida. She is a highly skilled advertising professional, academician, and researcher. She holds a PhD in mass communication and has over 22 years of experience, which is a blend of 8 years of industry experience and 14 years of teaching and research. She has also had over 100 research contributions covering 6 books and many chapters, paper presentations, and various funded projects. She also received the prestigious 5th Gyanshri National Award for promoting talents in Hindi literature from Savitri Foundations. She was also awarded from the BJP for delivering services to especially abled people in December 2021. Dr. Lal has chaired many technical sessions internationally and nationally, and has conducted workshops on advertising research methods, qualitative research methods, campaign planning, storytelling, and advertising. And she has also chaired more than 50 admission sessions for the selection of students. And she continues to guide many students at Amity. We expect your undivided attention for this important session and active participation in the same. Please post your questions in the Q&A chat box. Over to you, Tapan sir.
Okay. I think I'm audible, right?
Yes, sir.
So thank you very much, Joey. Thank you for that nice and lovely introductions. I usually feel that such introductions are given twice, once where you are getting married and once when you are no longer in the earth. But since none of them are here, right, so let me thank you, Dr. Ruhi and Amity University for inviting me to contribute to this program, being a research person in this very important seminar, this faculty development program, and a very issue which is very close to me, these theoretical and conceptual issues. And in today's time, people will talk about many new areas that consist of say, data collection, that consist of review of literature, but rarely somebody take the pain in looking at the theories and concepts. And that is why I thought it is very significant that we must introduce to the young and budding researchers about the issues which are central to research itself. So I will ask you let me begin with that. When you do some work, a research work, so first and foremost, we need what is research, and secondly, this is the fundamental questions or the key things in research, which call what, how, and why. So what is research? The first question one asks. Then second question is, why should we research? And the third, how do you do research then? Now, my lecture on this today will focus on these key points. Ostensibly, somebody introduces you to say research is a problem-solving activity. In fact, if you Google search, you look at your mobile and find out what is research. Sometimes we should need to use your mobiles apart from the looking at Facebooks or WhatsApps, and even some study as well. So if you look at it, And they talk about the research is also inherently or intrinsically associated with what we call science. And both research and science are human endeavors to arrive at truth. So why do we do research? One philosophical answer to that is that we need to arrive at truth through them. And research is a means in that sense to an end. Other one is, apart from the truth, is also a problem solving activity. So why do we research? If we had a problem and I want to find a solution, so there you think, what are the alternatives? Which alternatives are better? Do you have the means to execute such alternatives? And then if nothing happens, so you try to find something which will help you in achieving this end or at this objective. That is also a research. Now, once you do that, then the question becomes, how do you do that? Okay, and we are now looking at a very, very structured type of research. So, like as we have many FDPs, we do look at it doing a PhD. So, in fact, I said when Dr. Rui talked about to me, sir, how do you look at the research? I said, most of the time people think research is only in the field of social sciences, only field of media studies, communication. I said, no. And there is a very intricate relationship between research and science. And even if you get a degree, which is called PhD, and it is actually means doctorate in philosophy. Now, why do somebody do a degree in science, in statistics, mathematics, get a PhD? Primarily because philosophy is the mother of all sciences. And philosophy began as a quest to understand the reality, to understand the truth. So if you look at the history of science, in fact, there's a branch of knowledge which is called philosophy of science. Very few people read now that branch of knowledge. And there's a very standard textbook by Lakatos and Musgrave on the philosophy. And there is another book by Peter Winch, published something 1970s, on the idea of social sciences. Now, these works are significant to understand that how the journey of research has begun. And it would not be outside the orbit or ambit of this research work to say that the capacity of our knowing, the human capacity to know, is cognition, made a question himself, that to ask the question, who am I? What are around me? How they are related to me? How they're affecting me? And in the end, how I am affecting them. So these are the questions the human mind tried to find its answer. So we began from the quest. Initially, it was a theology which tried to answer these questions. Then came the philosophy, which tried to rationalize these arguments. And then came the science, which tried to provide a factual answer to them. And then came the social sciences, who wanted to give a human answers to them. In fact, science itself, if you look at different dimensions, different types. So if you look at physics, the physics studied what? Physics studied primarily material phenomena, speed, velocity, motion, light, reflection. All of them are natural material realities which do not have a mind of their own, which do not have an existence of their own in a sense. And yet physics began to study those phenomena. Then came chemistry, which tried to find out relationship between different material objects, different, we call it as organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry. So what do you talk about them? Sometimes mixture, we said it is a mixture, and we distinguish from mixture from a combination, combined, because one is a mixture and a compound. You say this is a mixture, this is a compound. Now you look at different elements. So from a physical entities to the study of elements, the science took a turn from physics towards chemistry. And then came the branch of biology, which tried to study things which have a life of their own, which have an existence of their own. And then came social sciences, which tried to study the most complex phenomena of the world, that is human beings and their behavior. And therefore, unless until you conceptualize these ideas, then you won't be able to do a research. So theoretically, I said, how do you do such work? What is the possibility of conceptualization? And let me begin with something like, why do I say the concepts are important in social sciences? There are arguments in social sciences who said that we sometimes confuse with the definitions and concepts. So people will say, what is the definition? Now, do you have a definition of a definition? Have you ever tried to find out what is the definition itself? Now, if you try to find out what is the definition of definition, then you will find these terminologies. That definition means we are limiting certain things. So it is like a concentric circle where you find some things are in, something are outside, and something are boundary line. So borderline things. So that is what is called as definition. You say it is a cow. That means it excludes all other forms of animals. Right? It includes cow, bull, right? Heifer, like this. And what is the borderline between that? You might like what is called, ungulates, like nilgai. It's a borderline that we call it a guy, but actually it is not. So that definitely it's a definition. So definition means definitions are handy, but concepts are not. Why? Concepts are actually mental constructs. These are concepts are actually abstractions. If you ask me as a professor, a child, look at the concept of dharma today. What is dharma? Do you have a definition for it? Do you have a concept like justice? Do you have a definition for it? So we need to, but then everyday life, you use these concepts. Somebody says economics, it's a rational man. And someone says economics is a rational science because human beings are rational, and their behavior is rational. I said, where is the rationality in all times in human behavior? If it is so, Maurice Goodelier would not have written the book called Rationality in Economics. So, and I give examples of why it is not rational. Ordinarily, people say, sir, we study market. And we study market as a concept. And what are definitions are there? For instance, you're talking about digital market, we're talking about cyber market, we talk about online market. There's so many concepts of market we're using. Advertising market. But do you know what is the market as a concept or market definition? You try to find definition of a market. And 99% of people whom ask, they will say, sir, market is a place where buyers and sellers exchange goods and services. Perfectly fine. Because it sits with our understanding of market in Hindi, what is called as a mandi. So it says it's a mandi, it's a market, it's a place. And in fact, if you look at the concept of market, you will find the original term comes from the Latin word marketus, which means a physical space. But if that is so, then how do you tell me online market? How do you explain me share market? There is no space in it. So eventually, definitions are always handy. But the concepts are different. The concepts are abstract, and concepts are subject to criticism, subject to revision, because concepts are more dynamic, because definitions are given once, but concepts are not. For example, many years ago, and we are talking about something like, concept and realities in Indian context. No, I say as a student of sociology, as a student of communication, student of law, there are certain concepts we cannot avoid, for example, like caste. Someone asked, how do you look at caste? And that is why I'm saying these sessions, I would deal with, extensively on these issues. And this is a very significant concept. You ask everybody in India, what is your caste? Everybody knows this caste. But I ask, what do you mean by caste? No? Is it a community? Is it a community identity? Is it a cultural identity? Is it a national identity? Is it a social identity? Is it an individual identity? How do you look at the concept of caste? And people try to give a definition of caste. And why? That is why I said definitions and concept are different. Because why? What definition came? One of the earliest definitions of caste that I came across as a sociologist was the definition given by Sir Herbert Ridgely. And Ridgely said, because you can understand, Ridgely was, many of you would not have known. Sir Herbert Ridgely was the first commissioner of census in India in 1881. So when data was collected, everybody was giving their name. Everybody giving their name as a caste. So as an Englishman, he was worried. And what is this caste? As somebody, we never knew about caste. And everybody said, this is my caste. Don't mix it here. This is a subcaste of the caste. And this caste is higher than other caste. They were confused. They wanted to know why. Let's look at the phenomena. And so after many, going through files, tiers of papers and so on and so forth, he came out with the definition. Right, I will say the definition, and I say why definitions are also difficult to read, because he said the definitions. I will say, I am sure that he will not remember it, but I will still say that. He said caste. Caste refers to a group of individuals or a group of families who, caste refers to a group of individuals, a collection of families, a group of families who bear a common name, claiming a common descent from a mythical ancestor, human or divine, and professing to same hereditary calling, and who are, in the opinion of those competent to give such an opinion, as forming a single homogeneous community. Right, I understand it's very difficult for any of you to remember the definition, but that is why the problem of definition, because they would say, look, and what is consist? It consists all the characteristics. A group of families bearing a common name. Don't you have a common name? Gupta, Srivastav, Chaudhary, Gupta, Srivastav, Patnaik. You have a common name. Like common name. And we came from a common descent. And that descent is a mythical. And it may be human, it may be divine. Parasar, Narad, it can Nagasya, Kachap, it can be anything, human or divine. And from an ancestor, and professing to same hereditary calling. And everybody does a restricted choice of occupation. So if it is Kumbhakar, if it is Charmakar, if it is, Kalar, so you take an occupation. And are in the opinion of those who are competent to give such an opinion. Not everybody, but somebody who is competent to give an opinion. He says, what? They form a single homogeneous community. That is, they are a single and homogeneous. Right, if I take the definitions, I find one of the key characteristics of caste is endogamy. But where is endogamy here? Now, if endogamy is not there, does that mean I will discard the definition? Or if we can add the definition, then what? I should have a concept of caste in mind. But definitions sometimes restrict our thinking. And therefore, when you do research, a researcher is asked to make an operational definition. So how do you, because you are trying to find a definition which fits into your analysis or your study. And that is how in the context, because what is called research in context, you are contextualizing that. And therefore it is imperative that we must have an understanding of a concept. And these concepts may consist of facts and sometimes theories. That leads me to ask again a question, what is the theory? In everyday life, we use theories. Somebody says, hey, you are becoming very theoretical. Somebody says, no, you don't talk about with theory. Every one of you, all of you know, one point of time, have to talk about theory. But if you ask you what is theory, how do you answer that question? I think 90% time we will fail. And I remember, in my English classes, honors class many years ago, one teacher came to me in the classroom, sir, asked, what is literature? Everybody will understand what is literature, but how do I define literature? So I said, yes, sir, I will tell you. And he was very happy that somebody has at least given an effort to tell me what is the definition of literature. I said, sir, I am quoting St. Augustine. He said, he's again taken aback. Why are you quoting St. Augustine? I'm asking you to give a definition. I said, no, sir, I am very comfortable with St. Augustine definition because it fits it. He said, why? What is that? I said, he says, if you ask me, do I know literature? I will say yes. If you ask me what is literature, then I will say no. That means I know it, but I cannot tell it. So understandably, it means that sometimes, even though we have a faint idea of something in our mind, we are incapable of expressing it in determinate terms. So that is what the problem with the definitions are. That is what the problem with the theories are. And when I say what is the theory, the definition is exactly that. There is a nice definition of theory by, in another book, which is interestingly on population studies, and it was by Hauser and Duncan. Right? They said a definition of theory, but I quote somebody else's definition of theory, who says theory is simple. It is explication of facts. If you explicate the facts, they become theory. And keep it in mind, Big Bang theory, theory of relativity, theory of gravitation, what they are. They are all explanations of facts. Right? Sometimes these facts are relevant. I was telling us, Newton could think about gravitation theory. And I said, this is actual people have made a mess of it. I said, no, why, how did call about theory? Now, because he was sitting in the garden and an apple fell in his head. I said, very good. He was lucky that he was born in England and in London. But if he was born in Kerala, instead of apple, a coconut would have fallen in his head. And what he would think about gravitation, he would have think about his own health. So therefore, he was lucky. Sometimes environmental factors combine to help others. But eventually, if you look at the definitions of a theory, so we talk about to explicative facts. Now, similarly, when you look at the theoretical dimensions in methodology, in research, you need to have a theory. And you need to have a concept to deal with research, because you cannot proceed in research without that. Now, tell me any topic you want to do, whether you want digital marketing, whether you want the competition commission, you talk about anything. You must have a concept. You must have a theory. And if that is there, then only you can proceed further. Without that, it's not possible. So that is why, and I say sometimes why they are relevant to that. As a sociologist, when I studied many works, and I found two works, very, very significant work. In fact, if I say, one was Emile Durkheim, and second one was Max Weber. I said Durkheim is critical because Durkheim wrote a book which was actually titled as The Rules of Sociological Method. And second work is Max Weber, who also wrote a book which is titled as Methodology of Social Sciences. Now, these two books, these two works are significant for us, any social science research, not because as a sociologist. No, you can look at all psychology as well, you can look at any other subject as well. But they began with this concept. Because he talked about both Weber and Durkheim began with their work that in order to start up your research, you must have a concept in mind. You must have a definition in mind. And that is what is also the steps in scientific research. If you are not able to identify your area of research, if you are not able to ascertain what exactly you want to do, then how do you study? So that is why you need to define what is a society. If you have no idea of what is society, then how to work in conflict in society? If you don't know what is market, how you would say market, what is called perfect market or perfect competition. If you don't know about competition, how do you work on anything? If you don't know what is consumer, how do you work on consumer choice? So therefore, you have a concept in mind. And this is what is the essential part in research, that even if any area you do, you must have that conceptual clarity. And unless until you have that conceptual clarity, then it is explicitly impossible to deal with a topic later. So if I am working in an Indian society, I must have an understanding of Indian society. If you're working in marriage, I must have an understanding of marriage. Marriage as a concept, family as a concept. There could be different dimensions of family. As I study, it's a nuclear family. Somebody said a joint family. No, now the family concepts are now, many years ago, I asked my student, I said, what is a family? What does family consist of? Very cutely, nicely, she said, sir, my family consists of me, my younger brother, my parents, and our dog. And I said, good example. Fantastic. Said, you see, it consists of my dog, because don't you say dog is a member of a family. I look at this. My grandfather is not a member of family. My uncle is not a member of family. My aunt is not a member of family. But my dog is a member of family. And this is why, because we are not sure about the concepts. I don't blame her. Because in an increasingly individualized world, our conceptualizations are also fallen apart. And therefore, this is the primary task in the research we do. We look at this concept and then theories who are given. Because what? Because theoreticians are like building blocks. They had given us an insight into to study them, into examine them. So what are the insights they had given? That is why many years ago, it was Einstein who said, no, I can see it because we are standing in the shoulder of giants, because it is they who had given us. So therefore, whether we like or dislike, we look at the concepts and the theories. Sometimes these are changing, they also changes. We add them, we reduce these things and call them reductionism. But yes, we infer from them, we deduce from them. They become critical to our thinking. Now, let me give an example and say how it is relevant in this context to say about these ideas, from psychology, because many of you study, for example, psychology. We use concept. Many times, some people say, what are the problems? I said, okay, I have a fear for open places. I have a fear for fire. I have fear for water. So they said, okay, we give him a concept. They call these are phobia. And they identify them with the unnatural fears. So whether it is a hydrophobia, whether it is a agoraphobia, whether it is claustrophobia, whether it is zoophobia. So they give a name to this concept. And then this phobias comes. Then sometimes I said there are techniques. How do you want to deal with a challenge? They call these are projections. These are techniques of defense mechanism. They identified them, whether it's a defense mechanism. And some of them defense mechanism are very excellent to explain human behavior. Like someone says, what is we thought about our introspections, how a technique sometimes they use the defense mechanism as techniques to transform our one emotions into another emotion, especially one negative emotions into a positive emotion, while retaining the same element of that in it. And you said, how do you do that? Somebody says, okay, I am very violent. And if it's violence, you cannot fight. I said, okay, you reduce that inch and become a fast bowler. You bowl fast, hit people. Okay, you people will clap it at. Now you have anger, energy in that. You become army, you become you keep on hitting people, fight for a country, and then you are gallanted for that. So you are using different techniques, whether it is defense mechanism, they're given concept. And it was actually, it was Sigmund Freud who began this understanding of human mind, human consciousness through his work, what is called psychotherapy. And he called them on psychopathology and then called psychosis. So he said, we today, as a pathological dimension, as a neurotic disorders, and he came about to explain our neurotic disorders as anxiety. Our disorders are our own pathology we talk about. So he decided what is this problems in mind and how do we conceptualize this and think about it. Prior to Freud, prior to Charles, so what we are thinking? We are thinking, okay, if somebody is a mental illness, we consider, okay, either it is a curse by somebody, it is an act of a ghost or goblin, it is a Satan in his mind, so on and so forth. We never try to understand there could be psychological disorders which are a result of our own body. It is a mental phenomena, that level of consciousness. We are never aware of that. So giving a concept to the mind, giving a concept to our sensation, to perception, and to look at our lifestyle, to look at your life feelings, and what he calls, there are two types of forces, the forces of happiness and energy, and it's what is called libido, or the forces of energy, eros and thanatos. So we talk about two forces, death instinct and life instinct. If you remember Freud's, I studied many years ago, but I think if my memory serves me right. So you look at the life instinct or death instincts. These are concepts. Whether we may agree, and Freud has given a concept called libido. And for Freud, the concept of libido was very wider. There are, of course, his own students like Carl Gustav Jung who disagree with him. Fine, but it is a concept. And if it is a concept, it is subject to interpretation. And if it is definition, it is fixed once for all. Okay, this person defined this way. That's the fixed. So we need a definition, of course, because it is handy. If you have a concept, because concept is mind, and you cannot bring your mind to all this. What you can bring into, in fact, you can reduce those your thinking and reduce them to writing as talked about. You can reduce them to give them a direction, give them a purpose, and you can redraw their boundaries. So if you have a concept, you can redraw their boundaries. You can negotiate with them because concepts are dynamic. And once you have a definition, it's fixed. And sometimes these fixed definitions do not help us in achieving understanding or examining things. So what do you do then? We want to exercise that conceptual dynamics. We look at concepts. So therefore, justice as a concept. And when I say in a PhD research work, you must have an idea about the concept you are using and how to handle them. If you are unable to handle these concepts, then your work will not be complete. So if you say this, then I said, if you look at the work, there are theoretical, there are methodological, and there are substantive aspects. So theoretical, methodological, substantive, dialectical, and critical. These are, if you take these 5 steps in understanding research methodology, then I think a large part of your research will be complete. Because at least you would have to know what you are doing. So otherwise, what happens, these things are in mind, but you don't find a means where to find it. Who will explain these concepts? How do I use such concept? And sometimes we call some concept are master concept or key concepts, like a state. You might have a definition of state, but you also have a concept of state. When I teach state, I think political science have a very different meaning of state. Law, if I study in constitutional law, it has a very different meaning of state. In law, we call state and its instrumentalities. Now, Article 12, how it defines it law in the state. But in political science, I understand state, and I take straight away the definition from Aristotle. The state is a collection of families which gives a happy and honorable living to individual. Or you take an anthropological definition of state, which says state in organized political community. Now, that's what is in mind. But I am never confused with the understanding of state. Today, people use state, deep state, failed state, right? We use. But how do you, unless until you have a concept in your mind, then how do you analyze such things? Today, we are looking at the statist interpretation. What if we don't understand the state? If I would not, because at the higher level, at the research level, you should have both a definition of the state and a concept of the state in mind, so that you would be able to one as a handy for you and one for your critical analysis. So once you look at that research work, you need to look how the theories are to be there. Who had given such a theories? So maybe, like I studying about against coming back to state. So what is the theories? Now, if I do not know about social contract theory in state, so how do you go to study state itself? Today is also the same, and contracts are existing. If you are given, many of you do not know. I said, okay, sir, we are not concerned about law, we are not concerned about contract. But every day you work in law, in a legal field. Simple phenomena. You are going to market to buying a pen. You are into contract. You are using this Zoom platform, it's a contract. Microsoft platform is a contract. Your email is a contract. Every time you sign, you have to sign. You write, click. Nobody reads them. If you read them, actually, you will lose your eyesight. It's so thinly written. But nobody reads. We just simply assume and then sign it. And then they will say, no, you have signed that contract. We don't know. When did I sign that contract? So that's a part of life. And that is a contract which people consider themselves to form a state. That explains that. And today's we have same contract. You are giving or other ID, it's a contract. So therefore, a state, citizen, law, rule of law, these are all concepts. And these theories, and people have developed theories to explain them. Like Freud has given a theory to understand, say, about human mind. And we talk about, sometimes use psychoanalytical theory of delinquency of crime. So if I want to understand the crime, I also understand the Freudian theory. If I understand the crime, I take help of not only one psychological, I look at sociological theory of Durkheim's anomy or Robert Merton's anomy. Now I look at sociological theory, the psychic, sociological, the theories will help, because they may not help completely, because in the end, there are also approaches and perspectives, how to look at things. So naturally, when I think about conceptualization and theories in a research, what I have in mind generally, that the terms you are dealing with, like you are to want anyone giving me a communication technology. I see many years ago when I endeavored to study of communication. So you think, what is communication? What is mass communication? How mass communication different from simple communication? Who are the researchers? No, I think Dr. Rui might tell that earlier we was thinking about the person like Harold J. Laswell, like what he did the research on that. And much before that also, if somebody want to do, I know I was as a student, I was reading somebody like Everett Rogers, innovation and communication, how they are using such theories to help and understanding the social communication realities. I think it was Carl Lewis who talked about the transformation of message, the message, the receiver and the sender. So sender is sending what? His message, and is received by the receiver. And between that, what transformation takes place? Like it happens when somebody tells me something, I listen here. Then the message is transmitted to my brain. I analyze it and decide. So somebody says, no, your friend is really bad. Oh, I got the information. Then I process it, really bad. I analyze this critical in mind. Then if my behavior changes towards him or her, it's the result of that communication. So sometimes, and so when the communication come to the number of people from number of ways, that gives rise to what is called mass communication theory. And sometimes this communication also, what has happened with the intended communication. How do you intend? What is communication you are right to say? Whether it is towards your interest or towards the public interest. And many times I tell you, this Marxist theorist person like, I know there was a gentleman called Antonio Gramsci. I don't call him Uncle Gramsci, but I call Antonio Gramsci. And Antonio Gramsci's book, he wrote work from a selection from prison notebooks. And he writes very interestingly that when you agree to do something, do you really agree to that? Have you consented to do it? Sometimes I said, yes, I consented it. And he said, this consent is a manufactured consent. We taken for granted. Many students come to study law. I said, do you really interested, sir? Yes, from my childhood, I was interested in law. I said, no, not at all. It is because the environment now, your parents, your grandparents are things, okay, law is an emerging field, technical field. So there is a lot of opportunities. So you think that actually you are interested. But the genesis of our interest lies in a changing social dynamics of it. So similarly, Althusser said it is ideological state apparatus. How I are giving my consent? How our consents are manufactured? And he said it is the ideological state apparatus, like your media. So media sense, I will give an example. In 2003, when Dr. Manmohan Singh became Prime Minister, as a young boy, we are very, very happy because media gave a picture of Manmohan Singh as picture perfect. Here is a Sheikh who was a highly educated gold medalist everywhere, contributed to the country's growth as a finance minister, and an intellectual one. And we are so happy with him. We are so concerned, and we are all become fan of Sardar Manmohan Singh. And then same media, when he vilified him in the aftermath of this 2G scam, 3G scam, spectrum scam, we said, okay, there is no worst person like Manmohan Singh. And I will tell you why. So I will end up with a joke. Now, many years ago, I said, this joke is like this, that once Akbar and Birbal was going together in a garden. So Akbar said to Birbal, Birbal, I am feeling very bad in upset stomach. I don't know what to do. Birbal asked, Jahanpana, what had you were in a dinner? He said, I had, in Hindi, he said, brinjal, baigan. Oh, sir, baigan se battar sabji koi hota hi nahi hai. There is nothing worse vegetable than brinjal. Natural consequences will happen like this. That they went. After another 8 days, Akbar and Birbal was again in the garden. So Akbar says, Birbal, I am feeling very happy, very elated. No, the stomach is really good. Then he asked, Jahanpana, what had you eaten? He said, I had eaten brinjal, baigan. Oh, Jahanpana, baigan se to behtar sabji hota hi nahi hai. that nothing can be better than Baigan. Then Akbar reminded him, last time, no, a week ago, you said Baigan is the brinjal is the worst vegetable. And today you are saying it's the best vegetable. Hey, yes, he smiled. Sir, I don't have any enmity or friendship with the brinjal. I'm friendship with you. So whatever like you, I will say that. That is how we communicate the things. And naturally, our media, our publication division or other works is said. And interestingly, today's world is very, very divided. As you talk about, a lot of information is coming to us. And some informations are what is called a dialectical, opposite to one another. Some, and a very sane cognitive mediums are very, very rare. And therefore, it is significant to us that we have to look all of the things and must have the necessary cognitive capability to discriminate and defend things, to analyze and critically examine them. Those cognitive capabilities are very, very essential for any researcher. You cannot do a research but swayed away by what is called the utopian or prejudiced, biased informations. You have the necessity because God has given a human being a mind, a brain, which capacity is unlimited. And that has to be using as a filter to process this information. And the better you process, the more prepared you are, the better you are able to judge. And today, they said, as I to quote is on today's world, is as a 1999-2000 World Development Report says, the poor countries are poor not because they have lack access to resources. They are poor because they have lack of information. So today in a digital world, we are either information rich or information poor. So in Marxian sense, either information proletariat or information bourgeois. And it is time to think that how do you process such information, to look at in cognitive and understand that and use it towards our advantage to develop a theory. And this theoretical framework is collecting of facts, and facts are put like a garland to give a theory. And theories are of course contested, but they're also explanatory in nature. So unless but again, theories consist of such concepts. So developing concepts, using them, and to use a word called to build a house, you need bricks, and the imbricated structure is a house. And therefore you need to imbricate them to find a structure of your work, research work, based on the bricks of information, bricks on the bricks of concepts. The more critical, analytical, ontological, teleological concepts you will have, the better you are in a position that. So that is what nutshell the importance of theory and methodology. I think I was spoken more. I had not given Dr. Rui an opportunity to speak. Now I would leave the floor for her, so she could pitch in and say something more, and so that you could have what is called a gender sensitive, neutral understanding of contributions of theory and method in concept building or theory building and conceptualization. Thank you, Dr. Rui. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, sir. You have explained everything so beautifully that still I'll try to compile what you have already explained. So in scientific language or in academic language, I would like to summarize what you have explained. So theoretical framework, as you have already mentioned, that it is summary of researchers' theory regarding a particular problem that is developed through review of previous tested knowledge. And it identifies the plan of investigation and interpretation of finding, what all variables, constructs are there in the mind of the researcher, how they are linking the theoretical aspect and the practical component for framing the structure. So theoretical framework, which we can consider as a model, as a conceptual model that establishes a sense of structure that guides the research process. It includes the variable a researcher intends to measure and relationships to understand. So in conceptual model or theoretical model, basically we try to connect, we try to link the variable we are taking into consideration or the constructs which are there in the theory part. So researcher develop a theory and build a case for investigating a theory. And theoretical framework is researcher's presentation of theory, we can say, that explain a particular problem, and it is not based on his suspicion alone. It's based on the facts, figure, theories. So beautifully, you have explained the concept and theory, and I'll just like to summarize that the theory is used in a broad sense to refer to an abstraction which summarizes and explain the phenomena, and concepts are mental images or ideas relating to phenomenon or object that share common properties. And conceptualization, that is a part of research process that is called the thinking part of the research. And the factual part of research is related to the doing aspect. That is the data analysis, interpretation, facts, figure we are taking into consideration, and then we are conceptualizing everything. So here when we come to conceptual framework, so conceptual framework is written or visual presentation that explain either graphically or in narrative forms. And the main things which are studied, the key factors, the concepts, the variables, and the presumed relationship among them. So we try to connect each one to develop a framework which represent the way of thinking about a problem or a study or way of representing how complex things are. So conceptual framework sets the stage for the presentation of a particular research question that drives the investigation being reported based on the problem statement. So what should be the key feature when we are developing a research framework? So research framework is not merely a collection of concepts, but rather a construct in which each concept plays an integral role. And this conceptual framework, it is linked with all the concepts which we have taken, the variables, the factors we have considered, and it provides not casual analytical setting, but an interpretive approach to social reality. Rather than offering a theoretical explanation as to do in qualitative method, conceptual framework provides the understanding of the research. It provides not knowledge of hard facts, but the soft interpretation of the intentions. So conceptual framework is, we can say, establishment of tentative relationship between the dependent independent variables which are included in the study, visualizing the conceptual causal trends to form the representation of interrelatedness among the identified issue and variable. We are taking into consideration the hypothesis, the assumptions, and we are trying to connect with them. We are trying to establish the relationship between variables and the hypothesis. So if we will try to find out what are the difference between conceptual and theoretical framework. So conceptual framework, it is created from variety of conceptual and theoretical perspective. And theoretical is adapted from existing theory. What theory we are taking into consideration while doing our review of literature, the theories which are the base of entire research project, these theories will be the part of the theoretical framework. But when we are talking about conceptual framework, here we are taking into consideration the conceptual perspective. And the synthesis of relevant concept will be there in the conceptual framework. And in theoretical framework, basically, it would be the application of theory as a whole or in part. And conceptual will go inductive and the theoretical will be deductive. And how we will do that? So first we will identify the relevant concepts, and then we will define each concept and operationalize these concepts. And then identifying any moderating or intervening variable, identifying a relationship between variable, we will develop the framework. And we can draw it as a picture or a statistical model. That would be the conceptual framework because it visualizes the variables and how they are related. Generally, framework may include one outcome and multiple hypothesized associated factors. So there'll be input variable, there'll be mediating variable, there'll be outcome variable, and we are connecting all these. So which are the input variable, which are playing as a role of mediating variable, or moderating variable and then outcome variable, how we are linking in input variable to outcome, what are the hypotheses we have taken into consideration in our research work, and how these hypotheses are also linked. So applying all these concepts and ideas, we will develop a statistical model that will be the conceptual framework, and it can take from equation or diagram or simply description or how the variables are related. So diagram may be taken in the form of overlapping domain framework or sequential or ecological. And these models will be, I would like to share a few slides to show and explain these models. I will not take much time, already I have taken. Is the slide visible? Joy?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible. It's visible.
So this is a conceptual framework as an equation where you are taking one variable and another variable and you're adding it. That is like an equation where you will explain when the domains which are overlapping with each other. So you'll explain, you will frame the conceptual model like this: the domain A, domain B, and domain C, which I will explain further with this model, that if you are taking into consideration the variable as a genetic factor and individual factor like age, sex, bedding habits, and the third variable you are taking as environmental factor, pollution, temperature, and your problem is to find out what are the reasons for hair fall. So here you can find there are some common factors which are there and each one is overlapping with the other. So you are explaining it with this model. So we call it like genetic factor. So here I would like to explain how you will draw a model. So conceptual framework as a sequential diagram where you will try to connect variable with each other and you will try to find out that which variables are there which fall under which domain. In one domain, what are the subdomains, and accordingly, as per the research problem, as per the research area, what are the variables you have taken and what are the construct of your research, you will connect, and then the outcome variable will be the condition where it will come, what are the tentative solution or which is coming up, what will be the outcome of the research, you will take as an outcome variable. So there'll be input variable, there'll be mediating variable, and there'll be outcome variable, and you will try to connect each other to develop a framework, and that framework will be known as conceptual framework. So this is another example to show you how it looks like. So here we have taken the variables like socioeconomic status, knowledge and awareness, attitude. These are the input variables, then food consumption, dietary habits, and physical activities, which will lead to obesity and the lifestyle diabetes and hypertension. So it will look like this. This is an example to show you how conceptual framework looks like. So now we are open for the question answer round. So I request Tapan sir to please join and.
I have already joined. So
I'm indeed ready to answer the questions.
yeah, I am not ready. I write Mohanty. Ready are in Andhra Pradesh. No. Anyway, please.
Sir, there is a question.
Yes,
Can you please explain in brief how to use Prisma technique for writing a paper and how to develop a conceptual framework model for it for research?
Well, when you want to develop a conceptual model, any research you do, that is, let me give you a concrete example. If you want to write on development communication, so you have to develop what do you mean by development communication? That means whether communication can play a significant role in development. Now, development itself has different dimensions. Whether you want women development, whether you want agricultural development, right? For instance, there was a book written in 1980s by Paul Hartman, which is called Agricultural. No, they talk about mass media and rural life. Right? They were talking about how mass media is influencing rural life. And now, if I take in the agricultural revolution, the information like Krishi Darshan or radio that is transmitted, how helpful they have been to deal with, to explain the rural Indian population, the farmers, that look, these are the high yielding variety of seeds. For instance, our green revolution began with use of both high yielding variety of seeds and also the use of fertilizers and pesticides. Now, how do you put that into mind of people who are agriculturists and to know that we should not use these old varieties, but use high yielding variety of foods? Now, that is how do you communicate to rural people? The thing you want to tell them. So that is how you conceptualize it. Now, if you conceptualize that development is a practice whereby the transmission of knowledge can be possible and possible in a particular manner, then you conceptualize it this way. So you conceptualize is that in order to enhance agricultural productivity, it is essential to involve the farmers of India in the modernization of agriculture. And for that, they need to be communicated in a language where the logic and language of development is transmitted to them and through the translated language where they are comfortable with. Otherwise, what happens if I speak very good English, Latin, but you don't understand, or French, you don't understand what is the point of saying. So that is why if I want to give a meaning of law, I am not using legal language. For example, if I come back and say, "Luz ignorantia juris non est factum," you won't understand that. Or actus non facit nisi mens area. So you don't understand that. It might sound good for you, but what I want, I don't want to look myself impressive, but sometimes we use that problem. In order to make myself feel myself impressive, we use language and tools which are not fulfilling the intended objective. The intended objective is that involving in farmers in agricultural modernization. So therefore, you must conceptualize your research in such a way, such a thematic framework. It is called thematic. Such a thematic framework that it becomes relevant, not redundant to that. That is the conceptualization. Focus on relevance and focus about the reduction the redundant. So that is the point. I think even with any work you do, that is the bottom line of it. Thank you.
So a question by Nauren. She's saying, can conceptual framework be misleading for a researcher because his or her own model can be wrong or misguided?
Well, that is, you cannot say it is, it can be misguided one. Let me give an example from science. There is a book in 1964, it was published, The Structure of Scientific Revolution, right? The Structure of Scientific Revolution by Thomas A. Kuhn, where he wrote that many years ago, people were working not suddenly on different laboratories. They are working under a general paradigm. He used the concept called paradigm. And he said, for instance, Newtonian paradigm. Then come an Einstein's paradigm. Because Newtonian paradigm was about thermodynamics. Einstein's paradigm was about relativity. And Max Planck's paradigm is about quantum physics. Now, thousands of researchers or millions of researchers worked from, and Newton's paradigm came in when? Newton wrote his book, Principia Philosophiae Mathematica in 1687. And from 1687 to Einstein's 1928, people who were actually working under one paradigm for close to 250 years. They're working under the theory of Newtonian mechanics. And now we know that Newtonian gravitation is not enough. There is a relativity to it. And from relativity, 30 years after, Max Planck know there is a quantum physics about. And 70 years later, we know there is a God particle. So therefore, I cannot say God particle has dismissed Newtonian theory. It is not misleading for that. But these are foundation steps. And if we are advantage of time, we must be in a position to distinguish the grain from the shafts. So you have to go through the conceptual, because everybody who writes these concepts, like Marx, I may not agree with Marx, but he himself has beautifully framed a structure to look how the history of hitherto existing society, the history of class struggle. So I cannot say Marx is misleading. For my context, from my point of view, I might agree or disagree with him. but he has a perspective and I need to study that perspective. Therefore, conceptualization talks about that. That is why you do in a review of literature. That these are the books I studied. They are focused on that. And there is a research gap. So either like you find a research gap through review of literature, you also find a conceptual understanding through the study of different concepts and critically examining them. That's a part of researcher. Otherwise, what is the distinction between the class 2 and 10 teacher who goes and teach students like this is the formula and as myself? Because we are using that critical input to it. And the researcher, you expected to do that. You might blindly don't follow anything. You might agree and swayed by one particular idea and thinks that is critical for your research. That is fine. And who knows, 20 years down the line, which you consider is good enough, which may be discarded. So there is no guarantee. But at that point of time, the way you are working it, that is significant to you. And how logically, coherently, consistently, reasonably you are able to explain them. That's the point. Whether you are right, nobody, in social science we tell, nothing is absolute truth and nothing is absolute lie. In between, it depends how you're constructing your theory, how you are giving plausible explanations. What are the facts you're assuming and how we are coherently organizing the facts to building up a theory. And that's their point lies. Okay. So that is in Sanskrit we call Ekasada Vipra Bauda Vadanti. There's only one God, people think differently. And that's what you would do in research. Yes.
That's amazing, sir. Sanjana Sharma is saying, very good session, sir. It's always a pleasure to listen to you.
No, I don't know whether she had pleasure because I'm only listening when she is listening first time to me. No, so that is fine. But thank you very much. A compliment is a compliment. I think once you receive compliment and it's something like, you know it is wrong, but you still enjoy it. So thank you very much, Sanjana.
Yeah. Sir, we'll sum up the session. I think that's about it. Yeah. So, sir began with theology, philosophy, sciences, and then moved on to social sciences because he saw that studying the human mind, the most complex element, came theories and concepts. The importance of these concepts are there because they are dynamic, they can be re-examined, they are always can be revised, and they're abstract, whereas definitions define, they have boundaries. So we intend to blend facts and concepts. Definitions are definitely handy, but we look at concepts for our research. When it comes to theories, it's how they are used in our daily lives. We define things like caste, society, market through theories. And we need conceptual clarity while we're explaining facts, like the Big Bang theory and theory of gravity. So these are constructed with explanations through concepts and theories. Sir also spoke about a lot of thinkers and scientists and theoreticians from Aristotle to Roger Everett to Marx to Gramsci. And he also ended with a very interesting anecdote about Manmohan Singh. The questions which were relevant, sir addressed them about and gave an example of developmental communication and how the thematic framework has to be strong and relevant today. Ruhi ma'am also contributed immensely. She showed us a graphical representation of models and how concepts are linking variables and other factors in a research, and overall how we can use a theory to make a case for our research. So I thank you all for participating and hearing sir and Ruhi ma'am. And thank you so much, sir, for taking out time for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I immensely enjoyed, and thank you, Dr. Ruhi and Dr. Dharmendra for inviting me, and thank you, Joey, for very nicely moderating the session. Right. So thank you. I am very happy. So now I can leave, I think.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I have to join with a session on Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts for a book release function. So I will excuse.
Thank you so much, sir, for your precious time and
thank you.
Taking time from your busy schedule and contributing in our workshop. We are grateful to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Now I would like to invite Radhika to take over the session and start the third session for the day.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good evening, one and all present here.
I am Radhika Baidia, PhD scholar at Amity School of Communication. First of all, I would like to thank my department teachers for giving me the opportunity to welcome Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, media educator, trainer, researcher, analyst, and author. Sir is the Dean at DME Media School and Director at DME Studios and Production in Delhi Metropolitan Education, Noida since 2018. Before that, Sir was a professor and Dean at Vivekananda School of Journalism and Mass Communication and Dean at Research and Publication at Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies, National Academic Head at Zee Institute of Media Arts and Zee Institute of Creative Arts, Zee Media stationed at Noida. For today, Sir will be discussing about the qualitative research methods that are in-depth interviews, focus group discussions. It would be an honor for us to welcome you, sir, and it would be a pleasure for us to learn from your expertise. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir. Thank you so much
Good
for
evening,
joining.
sir.
Good evening, sir. Thank you
Good
so much.
evening. Good evening. So, Radhika, will you put my PPT on the screen?
Sure, sir. Sir, I hope it's visible.
Yeah, it's visible. Okay, so as the topic for this session is focus group discussion and personal interview. So these are the two methods I believe everybody is aware of. This is part of the qualitative studies. So I will in brief, will talk about focus group discussions and interviews, and then I'll talk about the similarities or the differences and the various types of focus groups, and then the data analysis and all. So that is how I will proceed. So focus groups are the small groups which we use for the purpose of data collection. Normally, as there is a practice that the group size is normally small. Because if there's a bigger group size, then the data collection might not be that easy, and the quality of data may also be affected. So as it's prescribed that the size of a group has to be 7 to 15 normally. This focus groups extracts knowledge from complex personal experience, beliefs, perceptions, and attitudes, because normally what happens, whatever topic we have chosen for a study, we need to collect data in a manner, though there are various types of maybe structured or unstructured, but mostly focus group discussions are basically unstructured, because that provides more scope for having diverse opinion, and the members of the focus group, they can come out with their own thoughts, with their own experience, and the expression will be more comprehensible. This focus group is carried out using moderated interaction. Now this moderation can be done by the researcher himself or herself, I mean the person who would have planned the study, or somebody would have been deputed, somebody would have been, might be assigned the role of a moderator by the researcher to do that job on his or her behalf. Next. Okay, so as we all understand that this is a qualitative data collection approach. The good point about a focus group as compared to other methods, that's cost effective. And there are promising alternatives in participatory research, meaning thereby that if we compare it with interviews, or we compare it with the survey method and all, then obviously here there's more focus, because if we are conducting a survey, there could be cross section of people, and it will be difficult to identify the target audience, the respondents. But that's the good thing about focus group, that we can always choose the members of the group whichever type of group we decide is necessary for our study, but we have the liberty, the researcher has the liberty to choose the composition of the group, right? So this can be one-to-one, this can be one-to-one, and this could be the group discussion also. Next. Okay, so if we try to look into the difference, as I was referring to, between focus group and the personal interview. So both the methods appear similar in many ways. In the sense that we are collecting data from a set of respondents, wherein we are using certain questions, either the fully structured, or there could be a mix of the two, structured and the unstructured. And in interview, there is one-to-one discussion, like the interviewer is asking questions to the interviewee, which exactly is not the case. So that's point where the focus groups depart from the interview, because there are many more people involved in focus group as compared to the questionnaire, as compared to the interview method, wherein there are mostly two persons involved in the process of data collection. Yeah, next. Okay, so again, talking about this difference between the focus group and the personal interview. So in a focus group, researcher is moderator or facilitator. And as I told you this earlier also, either the researcher himself will be acting as moderator, or some researcher could be involved in playing the role of a moderator. Whereas in the case of interview, that kind of facility is not available. The person who is collecting the data, he himself is the investigator. He is the person who is conducting the interview, and mostly the interviewer is just one person. In exceptional cases, maybe more than one, but normally there is one person who is involved in conducting an interview. Now, as far as the focus group is concerned, the researcher, as I already said, that may not be directly or indirectly involved, and his job might be done by some of the moderator or the facilitator. So in focus group, like since, as I said, that the researcher may not be directly on the front, may not be directly involved in that, and somebody else, some moderator is conducting the session. So the researcher is at the periphery, but in interview, the researcher is at the core, because he is the one who is collecting data by making use of the interview method. Next. Now, talking about stimulus in both in the interview method and as well as in the focus group, the stimulus is always working in the process of the data collection. Now we'll try to understand how stimulus is working in the process of data collection. Yeah, next. Okay. Now, what is meant by stimulus means what is that one thing which is motivating the respondent to come out with the answer that the researcher is looking for, to come out with that information which the researcher is looking for. So in the case of focus group, there could be various ways of conducting the focus group. Say, for instance, the researcher can come out with a questionnaire which can be distributed among the members of that focus group, and they will be requested, they can be asked to fill that up. This could be one, or the other way out could be that before the actual meeting of the focus group, the researcher can email the questionnaire to the members of the focus group, and before they are assembling at one point, before that they would have already gone through the questionnaire, and when the meeting is taking place, the researcher or the moderator can explain everything to them and then can ask them to fill up the questionnaire there itself. So Now, this stimulus is working in the sense that they are, the respondents are being supported in so many ways, wherein they are in their comfort zone, and they are willing to share all that data which is supposed to be filled up in the questionnaire and which the researcher is looking for. Whereas in the case of the interview, the researcher is present in front of the respondents, in front of the interviewee, and is offering all that probing technique to make sure that the respondents is sharing all that information with the researcher, which the researcher is looking for his or her study. Yeah, next. Now, further moving on to this comparison, in focus group, the stimulus is offered by the moderator, and moderator is again minded, is also part of the focus group. This means if there is a 15 member, for instance, in the focus group, now the researcher can assign that responsibility to any one or two persons of the group to act as moderator. Whereas in the case of the interview, the questionnaire stimulus is offered by the researcher to the respondent, and whatever clarification or whatever explanation is required, all that is done by the interviewer. Right. So in a focus group allows the outflow of a very unique kind of information from the participant, because a discussion is taking place, and in discussion all kind of viewpoints can emerge, which might be diverse. If there are 15 people, they might be having different opinions, could be 15 different opinions, 10 different opinions. So all that possibility is there. So in a focus group, a member of the focus group has the opportunity to express himself or herself, or to put forth his or her viewpoint the way he or she thinks. So that's the good thing about a focus group. Now, in the case of the interview, the stimulus is offered by the researcher by developing, as I already said, by developing a comfort zone, by ensuring the credibility of the process, and by giving this confidence to the respondents that whatever data is being collected, that has a specific purpose, and the respondent should be at ease while he or she is responding to the questions which are being posed by the interviewer. Next. Okay, now this is a graphical representation as to how the personal interviews are taking place. And in the digital age, there could be so many ways wherein the interviews can take place. I mean, till the advent of internet, obviously there used to be only one way of doing the things, wherein the interviewer has to be in the physical space with the interviewee, and then the discussion is taking place, and the interviewer is noting down everything and then writing that down. That used to be very conventional method of doing the interviews. But nowadays, with the availability, and then obviously even before this digital technology came, when this telephone came into being, so the telephone use was being done in a big way, and which we call as a telephonic interview. So in that case, even if the interviewer and the interview, they are not at the same space, in the same place, even then the conduct of an interview was possible. So personal interview is one, then that was followed by a telephonic interview. Now with the advent of internet, two more things have been added. One is the email, and email is one such thing which is very frequently used, and the other is the web. What is meant by web? Web means there could be so many such platforms, like if we take the example of Zoom. Very recently, if I can give you a very live example, a very recent example, last week there is a researcher who is conducting data for his PhD. Now that was on citizen journalism, and he approached me for an interview, and the interview was conducted on Zoom. So he created a Zoom link and sent me the Zoom link, and then a whole discussion took place between him and me on Zoom. So what was the facility? I mean, if we are taking this kind of interview, this was one-to-one. This was not in the physical space, in the virtual space, but it was on the pattern of one-to-one, face-to-face, and then also the whole thing was recorded. So he recorded the whole thing. So it was convenient to finally put all that on a piece of paper and to analyze the data, because all the data was in the recording mode. So that's the benefit nowadays which we have with the advent of the web space. Now, talking about further types of interviews. So broadly, there could be 3 types of interview: structured, unstructured, and semi-structured. Now, in interviews, mostly the structured interview is preferred because data collection and data analysis becomes easy. So it's the most conventional thing which is done in interviews. But then there could be unstructured interview wherein the researcher might be having certain such areas, such and such topics which he would have noted down, and then this will be more in the form of discussion, wherein there's one similarity that we can draw between an interview and the focus group, because there are not limited options, and there is no the questionnaire is not very well structured, and there can be a mix wherein certain questions might be in structured mode and certain could be unstructured mode. Yeah, next. Okay, now what are the steps which are taken in the focus group? So firstly, the whole planning is to be done. So the important questions need to be formulated before the focus group discussion is to take place. And then obviously the group will be assembled, we will be called at a stipulated place on a certain date and time. And then the discussion will follow, the questionnaire may be distributed, and then the data collection will happen. Right, and then after the data has been collected, it has to be properly written. It has to have to undergo the process of editing, and then it has to be analyzed after the collection of data. And then after that, the reporting the results means, I mean, the data has to be put in a manner wherein it is understandable. The outcome, the final outcome can be there in the form of the results, and all those analysis is to be put together finally. So on the face of it, if we look at this kind of process, this looks like 3 stages which we normally use in the production, any kind of production. Normally, as we more use these kind of terms in video production or film production and all, wherein 3 important components we talk about. One is the pre-production, production, and the post-production. So on that pattern only, we assemble the data collection till the analysis of the data. Yeah, next. Okay, now how to design this focus group? So firstly, we have to decide on what the data is to be collected, the main theme or the topic of the focus group that need to be decided. And then there is, as normally in all kind of researches that we do, and then we have to decide about the objectives. Right. So all those objectives have to be spelled out, because that will give you a track, that will give the researcher a track which is to be followed in the focus group discussions. Then next thing is who will be our participants. That's really a difficult thing, but it has to be decided based on the nature of the study. Nature of the study means whether, I mean, depending on what topic or what in what area we are conducting the research, accordingly we need to decide whether we need to have the homogeneous audience or whether we need to have the heterogeneous audience. It all depends on the demography and the research area. Then we have to have the suitable location. Suitable location again may be varied. there may be a location wherein the members of the focus group who we have identified, we will invite those people to reach at that particular venue, and then there the discussion can follow. Or the other way out could be, for instance, if I give you an example of this kind, wherein suppose if you are conducting a research wherein you have formed a focus group which is in the rural areas and you are living in a city. So it's not recommended that you invite those people to come to the urban settings, to a location, assemble there, and then face, and then be part of the focus group discussion. Instead, the better way out could be that you go to that area, to that village, and whichever time and everything has been decided in advance, and there you ask everybody to invite everybody to the Panchayat Bhavan or any such place, ask them to be seated there, and there you can organize the focus group. The benefit of this kind of focus group will be that all your respondents will be in the comfort zone, instead of if you are calling them to a location which is foreign to them, and wherein they will not have that kind of comfort level which is so essential for the collection of data from your respondents. Yeah, next. Okay, so preparation of the pre-session. This means the ethical issues need to be resolved initially. This means when you are taking decision about everything regarding the making of the questions and deciding the venue and time and everything, and choosing your participants. So it is necessary that no such thing is to be discussed, is to be asked, which might be wherein the respondents might be uncomfortable. Because if they are not in their comfort zone, you will never be able to collect the right kind of data. So ultimately, you will suffer if you are not taking these kind of precautions. And also, initially in focus group, as a researcher, as a moderator, your job is to break the ice, so that they are very comfortable in talking to on which area, which topic you want them to talk, and then the right kind of information will come out in this kind of process. And then during the session also, you have to facilitate the session in a manner wherein there is a smooth flow of the session. This means there are 15 members in the group. Each one of them is given an opportunity to speak. You should make sure as a moderator that nobody is allowed to monopolize, or nobody is allowed to dominate the whole session, wherein just 1 or 2 or 3 persons are dominating the whole scenario and they are trying to thrust their opinion on everybody, and others are not allowed to speak. So that is basically the responsibility of the researcher and the moderator to make sure. And also, whatever is transpired during the session, it is necessary for you as a researcher, as a moderator, that each of the important points which are being discussed are noted down properly. Either you record it audio wise, video recording, I would not recommend, because that is something which will put the respondent to an uncomfortable position, because once everybody knows that the camera is on and everything is being recorded, then obviously your data is going to be affected. People will be conscious and they might not be sharing all that information, which might be very essential for the conduct of your study. Audio, certainly you can do, but then again, since I am talking about the ethical issues, it is important to tell your group, your focus group, that you are doing the audio recording, because if you do it without telling them, then it will be an unethical thing, because the respondents have a right to know as to how you are collecting the data, and also how you will be using that data. That confidence you have to give to them, and you have to be honest to whatever you would have told them. Otherwise, it will be an unethical practice. Then you have to steer the whole discussion, and you have to make sure that the discussion is moving in the right direction. Because if it is sidetracked, or if it is moving to a track which is not which would not have been planned, then your data will not be the kind of data that you might be deciding to collect, and it will affect your entire study. Yeah, next. Okay, so as initially also I referred to this, and it's a very common understanding that all this data that has been collected through a focus group, it's a qualitative data. Now, this data has to be analyzed. Whatever data has been collected, it has to be analyzed. Now, it can be analyzed in various ways. The most common form of data analysis here, the data that has been collected, is the content analysis. So that is your pre-decided thing in any case, depending the kind of study that you would have undertaken, whether you will be doing the content analysis or any other kind of analysis. The others could be like you can go for the grounded theory analysis, wherein if the study is of a kind wherein nothing is available in advance, and it's completely the first time that you are conducting a study, and there is no references available, there is no earlier studies available to your help. So obviously you can go for the grounded theory, and whatever data is available and you are collecting on the ground, that data is to be analyzed. And then as far as the discourse analysis could be one way, and discourse analysis is again one thing which is the most befitting thing as far as the focus group discussion is concerned. Yeah, next. Okay, so finally, the result is to be written and is to be reported. It again can be reported in multiple ways, and it all depends as to what kind of data and how the data analysis is to be done. And that data analysis, whichever way the data is being analyzed, that will have a bearing on the presentation of the result. And then the documentation has to be there. In any case, the documentation has to be there. As earlier also I was referring, whether you are recording, making a video of the whole session, or doing an audio recording, or if you're not doing either video or audio, then obviously you have to depute one or two persons in the research team, maybe moderator, or if you have assigned that moderation job to somebody, so some member of the group, you might be doing the recording thing or the noting down everything on your own as a researcher. So that will be your documentation part. And if no audio video is there, then in any case the photographs have to be taken, because that will be a proof, that will be an evidence that the focus group discussion has actually taken place. And particularly those who are conducting the focus group discussions as part of their PhD thesis, PhD research and all, they have to have that kind of evidence that the data has been collected actually on the ground by making use of the focus group. Next. Okay, so all this data which has been collected, which has been analyzed, is generalized. So we draw the conclusions based on whatever data has been collected, though we know that the sample is very, very small. There could be 15 people or 17 people, maybe 20 people, not more than that. But those are the people, the way we have chosen those people, they are supposed to be the representative of the population from where we intend to collect the data, so we can always generalize that data. Okay. Now, types of focus group discussion, there are various types. Single focus group means wherein there's one group and there could be a moderator. Moderator may be one or two, and mostly moderators are somebody from among the group only, and responses are recorded. right? Whichever way, as I said, I am again repeating, either could be in the spoken word form or recording form or whatever. And also to some extent, the observation is also playing an important role in this kind of data collection, wherein the body language and the other details, the way the people are reacting, the way people are putting their arguments or the counter arguments on the issues which are being discussed in the focus group, all that must be noted down by the researcher, because all that will help in a big way as far as the data analysis is concerned finally. Moving on to, then there is a two-way focus group. Now, two-way focus group, a very common understanding I can give you, where there are two groups. Normally, what we find in the books that there could be two groups which are sitting apart at a distance. And initially you are, as a researcher, you or your moderator are talking to one group. And after you finish with the first group, then you are talking to the second group. But while you are talking to the first group, the second group is in the vicinity, is sitting close by, and they are listening to the discussion which is happening in the first group. Right, so there could be a glass ceiling, like if we can, but then that looks very, very mechanical. Normally, what happens? You can be both groups can be in the same space with a little distance. The benefit of this will be that by the time you will reach out to the second group to talk to them, they would have already listened to the first group. So that will ignite their whole process of thinking. And by the time you will start having discussion with the second focus group, they will be more aware, they will be more articulate, because they know what all is to be discussed and all. That is one. Two, by the time you are talking to the first group, the second group will note down, or we will make a note as to what is their reaction to whatever had transpired during discussion in the first group. So that kind of data you will also get when you will be talking to the second group with regard to the response of the members of the second group to the members of the first group. So this will help you in creating some kind of linkages, and this will help you to go much deeper into the whole process of the data collection while you are talking to the second group. Next. Yeah, there could be dual moderator focus group, means since beginning I've been mentioning this, there could be one moderator, there could be two moderators. So whenever there are two moderators being used, so that will be the dual moderator focus group. Those moderators can be decided in a manner. And as I said, they are somebody who have been picked up from that group only. But then as a researcher, I should have that kind of understanding that if I'm choosing two people, those two moderators should have a different kind of approach, should have a different kind of thought process, because then there might be coming out some conflicting opinions, some difference of opinion, which will help you in having a data which is more apt, which is more analytical. It's not that all 15 people are talking the same thing and they all are convinced with the same thing and all. Then obviously that kind of homogeneity will not work. That will be very, 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 one-sided kind of data will be there. But then if people are there in the focus group who have a difference of opinion, who have different kind of approaches, different kind of thinking, so that should always be appreciated. Say, for instance, if you are conducting a discussion, for instance, on the farmers issue. Now, there might be some people in the group who might be in support of the farmers, movement. There might be some people who are against the farmers movement. Some might be thinking that this is that the government's legislations are bad for farmers. Some might be thinking they are good and they will give a boost to the rural economy and all. Now, if you are choosing two moderators, so those two moderators must be of these different opinions, not of the same opinion. That will give the courage and the confidence to the members of the focus group to come out with what they actually think, right? And your job, or the moderator's job, will be simply to steer and then to give an opportunity to the members of the group to vent out and to say whatever they want to say on that particular issue. Next. Then dueling moderator focus group means okay, so it is simply an extension, as I was explaining already. So there could be two, if there are two people, they are having a different kind of opinions. So this will be more in depth and more analytical data will finally emerge. Next. Yeah. Again, now when it comes to the moderator, now researcher, as I said initially, himself can decide to be the moderator, or he can employ a researcher in the team who is acting as moderator, or he can choose any one of the members of the focus group to become the moderator. So all these options are there. This we have to decide as a researcher which is more suited and which is more close to what we think, what I think, or what we think as a researcher as far as the data collection is concerned. This kind of, if the respondent is there, the biggest benefit is there, then the respondent and the other members of the focus group, they form the same peer. So if the respondent is one among the members of the focus group, then there are more chances of more varied opinion, more honest opinions emerging in a focus group discussion. Yeah, next. Okay. Now this is mini focus group. As initially I said that the maximum number should be 17 in all in a focus group, but then there could be 5, 6, 7 people also if there is a small group. In the case of a small group, we can even decide to have more than one small groups, maybe 2, maybe 3. So at different locations, we have this freedom that instead of collecting data from one location, from one set of people in one focus group, we can have 2, 3 focus groups comprising 5 to 7 members in different locations and all. So that will give more variety to the data that we are collecting. Yeah, next. Yeah, nowadays, even online focus groups is possible. Though it's a new thing which has been added, because when we talk about focus group, the first thing that comes to our mind is that we are doing this kind of exercise in a physical space at a predetermined location, and then the data is being collected. But then if there is any such thing wherein focus group in the physical space is not becoming possible, then obviously technology is there to our help, and if we can refer to the kind of circumstances that we have been facing for the last almost 2 years, and if some data is to be collected when meeting people face to face is not becoming possible because of pandemic or any similar kind of situation. So we have one option wherein online focus group discussions can take place. So that is one option that we can always use. Here the option is again which technology, which platform, which online platform we are using, right from Zoom to Google Meet, or we can create a chat room, or we can create a conference, or we can have a video conference, or we can have some online call. So, I mean, whichever way we decide, depending as to which technology is available to the members of the focus group that we are choosing. So accordingly, we can even make use of online focus group for data collection. Yeah, next. Okay, now analyzing the data. Okay, so initially, as I said, we can analyze the data in the traditional way, wherein the question-wise responses can be put together, can be analyzed, and the result can be taken out. That's the most common way of analyzing the data collected through the focus group. The other could be the critical analysis. Now, critical analysis here means wherein we can try to create interlinkages between, I mean, say for instance, if there are 2-3 different thought processes emerged, different kind of opinions emerged, then we can try to draw some link from one thought to another thought, and some interlinkages could be there. It can also be there wherein we are using more than one focus group. So that way the linkages could be there. The linkages can always be there. Say for instance, if we have 10 questions, so there could be the case wherein the result of one question is related to what is emerging from question number 5. So that link can be established, and nowadays we can use the mind maps for making this graphical representation of this kind of data analysis. Yeah, next. Yeah, so this is one example wherein we can create we can use the mind maps for creating these kind of linkages in a focus group discussion, wherein there could be one group, there could be another group, and certain on a same question, there are 3 different opinions are emerging. Now in another group, another 3 opinions are emerging to the same question, and then we are trying to establish a link between the responses that would have been collected in group A to whatever opinions emerged in group B. So that will be a better way of doing the things to get more analytical data, which will be more reliable and which will be more usable as far as our study is concerned. So that is in a nutshell I could tell about this whole focus group and the interview method. Now I invite your questions, anything that you want to ask.
Yes, sir. There are some questions I would request you to answer.
Yeah.
So the first question is from Abdul Rahman. That is a conceptual framework is used in new areas of research, while the theoretical is based on theories developed over an area that has a long history. So if you agree with the question, he would appreciate if you could provide some guidance on how you can apply research.
No, I couldn't understand primarily the question. What exactly he wants to ask? Yeah, I mean, if he can ask himself, or if you can repeat the question.
Sure, sir. So it's there a conceptual framework is used in the era of new research, while the theoretical is based on the theories developed over an area that has a long history.
Okay.
So if you agree with the question, he would appreciate if you could provide with some guidance on how you can apply the research, how it can be applied in the research project.
See, the one important thing which must be understood is that in many cases, this will happen when you are using the focus group. The theoretical framework might not be available. And that is how, as I referred to, that in such a case, we can make use of the grounded theory. And any data which is being collected through the focus group can form a basis for further studies, because focus group discussions have their limited significance, may not be the complete study, particularly if we talk about PhD researchers and all. So there could be no such PhD level research as I look at, which is completely based on the focus group. So if we are using the focus group, we have to have more than one technique to be used if and there is any PhD level study. Or if not, it is completely focused on the focus group only, then the data that we collect through focus group, that can provide a base for building a concept, for building an approach, which can further be studied in a more broad-based research.
So the next question is from Amit Kumar. So the question is, for a qualitative study, what should be the sufficient number of respondents to be incorporated to assess their responses?
It's always very difficult to decide the number of respondents. We face this problem in all kinds of studies, whether focus group or interview or surveys. Or so, I mean, if we look at this from the perspective of sampling, then the only thing that that we study, and I also believe in that, we should try to make sure that the respondents are actually the representative of the universe. Now, how we can make sure that the number that we are choosing is actually the representative of the universe? So what I believe in this, that simply number will not be the final thing to decide whether the data which is being collected is credible or not. The more important thing is how do we do the sampling of that data. Like if we decide to have in focus group, again, if we decide to have 2 or 3 groups, for instance, even if we decide that there will be 20 members in a group, so there could be three focus groups, maybe 60 people, maybe 5 focus groups, 100 people, then obviously more than that will be difficult. But then if we look at the whole thing from a different perspective, then anybody will say that even 100 data of a sample of 100 is not enough for the collection of data. So total number of the respondents is always difficult to decide. The more important thing is from where, like in the case of the focus group, from where we are collecting that data, depending on what topic we are doing the research. So we can go, suppose if we are doing a study on any such thing like the communication level of the villagers, or the usage of the media technology in villages and all, I mean any such, then, and we decide as to in a particular district, in a particular rural area, what exactly is the usage or the exposure towards the communication technology of the villagers. So we can choose, if there are 100 villages in a particular district, so we can decide that we will go for 10 villages and all, and there could be one group in one village, or we can choose those 10 villages in a manner wherein there might be diversity in those 100 villages. So to make sure that all 100 villages are represented in the data collection, then we have to go into the population numbers, the occupation of the people in those villages. So the sampling has to be done more wisely, more carefully, and that is more important beyond going for a certain number. So more than number, the sampling process will be more important here.
So there is another question from Lilina. She's asked, what is the purpose of focus group and how can the researcher analyze it?
Focus group discussion, according to me, is a better way of data collection as compared to interview and as compared to survey, right? Because through the focus group, we are collecting the qualitative data. Now, when our study demands collection of the qualitative data, the easiest thing is to conduct a survey. But the biggest problem with the survey is that identification of the respondent is a bit casual, whatever tools we apply. because mostly we are conducting a survey into cross sections of people. Even if we decide that the audience has to be homogeneous in the sense that we are collecting data from only among the youth, from only among the housewives or any such thing, but even then that's a more casual way of data collection. And what I feel that any data which is collected through the survey is not sustainable. It has a very, very small shell value. As compared to that, interview is a better method. But then in interview also, and particularly if we are conducting the in-depth interview and all, we will approach the people who have an expertise into that particular area, and their number will always be limited, maybe 5 or 10, and that will be one-to-one. But when we have the focus group, the biggest benefit is that when the discussion is taking place, different kind of opinions emerge, arguments and counter arguments happen. Everybody has his or her own voice, which is registered. So more diverse opinions are emerging, and we are providing everybody that kind of space. And recording of the data is also becomes possible. So according to me, focus group is a better way of collecting the data as compared to all other tools of qualitative data collection as far as the reliability of the data is concerned.
So next question is from Arushi Singh. She asked that how to address ethical issues in research while collecting data.
The first thing, as far as ethical issues is concerned, first thing is that there has to be a confidence building between the researcher and the respondent. We should not try, as a researcher, we should not try to befool the respondent. We should not try to mislead the respondent. We should not make a deliberate attempt to get the answers which we want to, which we are looking for. So we should not try to manipulate the things in a manner by twisting the questions, by formulating the questions, or by diverting the whole discussion in a manner, if we are taking reference to focus group discussion, wherein we know that the real data is not coming and we are doing it deliberately, then there is an ethical issue. Maybe as a researcher, we are not competent enough to handle the data collection properly, or we are not able to frame the questions properly, and that might be misleading somewhere which we did not intend. Then that leverage can be given to the researcher. But if we are doing it deliberately for a certain reason, for some vested interest of ours, then it's a completely wrong thing, and this is unethical. And as again, if I pick up example from the focus group, as I said, that recording has to be there. Now, if you're recording any kind of recording we are making of the session, that has to be done by telling the respondents. They should not be such that we give the impression that we are not recording anything because we wanted to give the respondent the confidence to say whatever they want to say, but we are using any such device, any such spy camera, or any such thing wherein nobody knows that the recording is being done and the recording is being done. That's a completely an unethical thing. So trust building is the most important thing, and the transparency is the most important thing between the researcher and the respondents as far as the ethical aspect of this whole thing is concerned.
So there is another question from Garima Sahu. She asked that if you could shed some light on what kind of questions should be avoided in focus group discussions and what questions must be asked in focus group discussions.
I think what I would recommend that we should not go by the structured questions in focus group discussions, because when we are using the structured questions, then obviously there will be close-ended questions, might be. maybe even open-ended, but they're mostly why we use the structured questions for two reasons. One that the research is on the track. Two, that we are not missing out on anything. So we try to frame the questions and we try to give the possible options. We frame them in the close-ended questions. Then that limit the scope of the data collection. Obviously, it is easy for a data analysis purpose, but that limits the scope. The important thing, the most important thing about focus group is that diverse opinions can emerge. Like as I gave you example, if you are conducting a study on farmers movement in any setting, people have different kind of opinions. So focus group discussion give space to, if there are 15 people, to 15 different kind of opinions to emerge. So there should be some broad areas, some sub-themes, some subtopics should be noted down, which should be floated, and let everybody respond to that, and let everybody should express his or her opinion in the focus group. That's the beauty of the focus group, which is not available in survey, which is not available in interview also. So that is something which should be taken care of. Yeah.
So the next question is from Preeti Verma. How to search free statistical tools, diagrams, softwares to plot the data?
I am not in favor of using any statistical tool in qualitative data analysis. Because it will be like quantifying the qualitative data, which I personally don't endorse. So qualitative data should be analyzed in the conventional manner. One, as a conventional manner, I mean, whatever areas or questions or whatever. So if there are 10 different areas, so under 10 different heads, we can analyze it also. Also, if there are common opinions emerge, we can put that together. Also, if there are certain exclusive opinions emerge, wherein we can have some quotes, wherein we can put certain statements within quotes, so within inverted commas, all that also can be put. Common opinions can be clubbed together and that can be put. And also, it can be presented in a more analytical way. And also, as I already explained, we can also try to establish some interlinkages. That is what I would recommend as far as the analysis of the qualitative data is concerned. And I'm not in favor of using any statistical tools for the analysis of the qualitative data.
So there is another question from Abdul Rahman. He asked that for the research project, having both qualitative and quantitative data has been more impactful.
It depends. It depends as to what exactly is your research topic, on what you are collecting the data. It will vary from study to study. There can be no one yardstick apply, whether only qualitative or only qualitative or both. So it all will depend on the kind of study which is being undertaken.
So there is a text from Amit Kumar. He texted that it was a very enlightening session, and thank you so much, sir. Now to conclude what sir has taken up in this session. So sir has discussed about the focus group discussions, that is involving gathering people from similar backgrounds or experiences together to discuss specific topics of interest. Focused group discussions in that size matters, that is usually between 7 to 15. Focus group discussions are generally complex personal experiences, but along with that, they're cost efficient and promising alternatives. Along with that, there was a difference between the focus group and personal interviews, that with it's about the collecting data, and interviews are one-on-one, whereas focus group discussion involves a group of people. Then sir discussed about the stimulus, that is something that causes growth or activity. Questionnaires are some sort of stimulus which is offered by the non-livings. Personal interest and personal interviews can be one of them. Then there were different type of interviews that categorized into email interviews, web interviews, personal interviews, and telephonic interviews. Then there were type of interviews which were discussed, that were the structured interview, unstructured interviews, semi-structured interviews. Then steps to conduct focus group discussion include the planning, that is designing the focus group discussions, execution, that is collecting data, then processing the post-execution, that is analyzing the focus group discussion data, and then it's processing post-execution, that is reporting the results. Along with that, also discussed about the data collection steps that were the preparation of pre-sessions, that is resolving ethical issues, facilitating the sessions during the sessions, that is the key functions taken care. Then Sir talked about the analysis, that is data is qualitative. And then there were some techniques of analyzing the data that were the content analysis, grounded theory analysis, and discard analysis. Results reporting were the next topics are discussed. That depends upon the data analysis. And for documentations, photographs can be taken of the focus group discussions. Then Sir discussed about the type of focus groups. Those were the single focus groups, two-way focus groups, dual moderator focus groups, dueling moderator focus groups, respondent focus group, mini focus groups, online focus groups. In the end, Sir concluded it with the analyzing and presenting data. There were two different ways of presenting it. Those were the traditional ways and using mind maps. Thank you so much, sir. It was a great pleasure for us, and it was such an enlightening session. And we actually got a lot of experience in terms of how focus groups are. It was such an interactive session for us. Thank you so much. Now I would request Ruhi ma'am to please give a vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Radha. Thank you so much, sir, for your presence and your expertise. We all are very much grateful to you. So I would like to thank both the speakers for the day, Professor Dr. Tapan Mohanty and Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, for giving your insights and helping us to learn more and more from your experience and expertise. How beautifully you explain things in such a simple way that we could understand the concept very easily. I would like to thank all the participants for attending the sessions. Since from 2 o'clock, they are continuously attending session for 3 hours, and for their interaction, because they are constantly asking questions as well. So thank you so much. I thank all the organizing committee, the core committee. I thank Professor Dr. Dharmender Kumar, our joint program director, our core organizing committee, Dr. Rubair, Dr. Zakia, Mansi, our research scholar team, Mansi, Shweta, Radhika, Arushi, and the faculty members who are involved with us and who are helping us for conducting the session. So thank you, everyone. Can we close the session? Yeah. Anything, Radhika, you want to add?
Yes, ma'am. In the last, I would actually want to tell the participants that there will be a feedback form which will be shared with you through WhatsApp or email. Kindly fill the form by today midnight. Thank you.